My five sisters stood behind Julian while he accused me of stealing $18 million. The sentence should have sounded impossible. Instead, it sounded familiar, because I had heard every word before. The same boardroom, the same polished walnut table stretching beneath cold white lights, the same 26 directors seated around us, the same foundation trustees, outside auditors, and donors watching from the second row, and the same man sitting between my sisters with his hands folded calmly in front of him. Julian Hawthorne, my adopted brother, their real brother. According to them, my murderer. According to the life only I remembered. Behind him stood Vivian, Claire, Rebecca, Olivia, and Sophie, 5 women who shared my blood. 5 women who had spent 6 years proving blood meant less to them than familiarity. On the screen behind Julian was a transfer record. Hawthorne Foundation, $18 million. Recipient, Vail Strategic Holdings. Beneficial owner, Ethan Vail. Julian lowered his eyes as if exposing me physically hurt him. I didn't want to believe it. He said, that was the exact sentence he had used in my first life. Back then, I had stood so quickly my chair toppled backward. I had begged them to pull the raw transaction logs. I had told Rebecca the routing number was wrong. I had told Vivian someone had altered the reconciliation file. I had told Claire I would submit to any independent investigation. I had told Olivia not to make a public statement until the evidence had been verified. And Sophie had caught my sleeve outside the boardroom. Just cooperate. She had whispered. Give them the servers. We'll fix this afterward. So I did. I surrendered my laptop, my administrator credentials, my private storage drives, my access keys, everything. By sunrise, the original authentication records were gone. 3 days later, Hawthorne Media broadcast my photograph beside the words Foundation Fraud Investigation. 2 weeks later, Vivian removed me from every Hawthorne committee. Rebecca froze my trust rights. Claire removed me from grandfather's medical contact list. Olivia called me a deeply troubled claimant whose resentment had escalated into financial misconduct. Sophie cried in my apartment, then voted with them the next morning. 6 months later, I found the first proof that Julian had known I was the biological Hawthorne son long before I ever appeared at their gates. He messaged me. I know what happened to the first DNA test. Meet me alone. I drove toward Blackstone Bridge. Halfway there, my steering locked. The car struck the barrier. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. Cold river water swallowed the windshield. I remembered punching my phone screen underwater. Vivian. No answer. Claire. No answer. Rebecca. Olivia. Sophie. 5 calls. 5 unanswered names. Then darkness. And then, I opened my eyes in this boardroom. Julian was still speaking. Ethan had access to the Foundation's monitoring environment. He knew how our controls worked. Rebecca slid a document across the table toward me. Her dark suit was immaculate. Her voice controlled. Signed the cooperation agreement. I looked down. Same agreement. Same page numbers. Same trap. In my first life, I had signed without reading every clause. This time, I flipped directly to page 17. Section 9. 4. Any intellectual property developed, modified, maintained, or materially improved through infrastructure situated on Hawthorne-controlled property could be placed under temporary family trusteeship pending investigation. Temporary. That word had cost me Vail Systems once. I pushed the document back. No. Rebecca's expression hardened. If you're innocent, cooperation protects you. No. Independent evidence protects me. Vivian sat at the head of the table. At 38, she had the kind of presence that made senior executives sit straighter. She had spent her entire life believing command and correctness were the same thing. Ethan, she said, this isn't optional. It is if you want my signature. Claire crossed her arms. You're treating this like another personal rejection. I almost smiled. Claire always did that. She could make cruelty sound therapeutic. This is about $18 million in charitable funds. Then investigate $18 million. We are. No. Julian is. Julian finally looked at me. There was amusement behind his concern. I discovered the transfer and generated the report because I was asked to review irregular foundation expenses. By whose committee? Silence. Rebecca answered. The Internal Risk Committee. Which you chair? Julian's mouth tightened slightly. Vivian tapped the table. That is enough. In my first life, those words had stopped me. Not now. I took out my phone. Julian noticed first. His eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Leaving. Vivian's voice sharpened. You are not leaving until this meeting is concluded. I opened the Sentinel Administrator console. Hawthorne Global, Enterprise LINSE status, active. Renewal type, temporary family concession. Termination rights, immediate upon material misrepresentation. Attempted seizure of Veil Systems property, or suspected evidence destruction. I pressed terminate. A confirmation box appeared. I pressed it again. Across the table, Vivian's tablet chimed. Then Rebecca's. Then Olivia's phone. 3 directors checked their devices. Vivian stared at the notification. Her face changed. What did you just do? I ended a software license. Claire frowned. What license, Sentinel? The room went completely silent. Even people outside Hawthorne knew Sentinel. It monitored internal financial fraud, executive authentication, vendor risk anomalies, identity spoofing, and transaction manipulation across every Hawthorne division. For 4 years, Hawthorne executives had spoken about it as if the platform were part of the family empire itself. Vivian rose slowly. You cannot disable a Hawthorne security system because you're angry. It isn't a Hawthorne system. For the first time, Julian stopped pretending to look sympathetic. I turned my phone so the ownership certificate was visible. Sentinel belongs to Veil Systems. Olivia stared at me. Veil Systems is a contractor. It contracts with Hawthorne. That isn't what I said. Julian laughed. Quietly, almost kindly. You expect everyone here to believe that you own the platform protecting a $30 billion company. In my first life, that question would have destroyed me. I would have opened presentations, shown incorporation documents, pulled up patent records, explained development history, begged them to see me differently. Instead, I put my phone away. I don't need any of you to believe me. Julian's laugh disappeared. Behind him, Sophie moved. Just slightly. That was all. Vivian looked down at the license notice. Termination effective midnight. Yes, the quarterly compliance cycle begins tonight. I know. This could disrupt 5 divisions. Your accounting systems will continue operating. You know Sentinel is integrated across the group. You should have considered that before accusing its owner of stealing from you. Claire shook her head. This is retaliation. No. I looked directly at her. Retaliation would be destroying Hawthorne data. I'm preserving it. Rebecca picked up her pen. Explain. Sentinel will stop processing new privileged Hawthorne events at midnight. It will retain the existing authentication and transaction records under the preservation clause your legal department approved 18 months ago. Her face stiffened. I continued. Which means nobody can erase tonight and blame me tomorrow. Julian spoke too quickly. That clause doesn't authorize you to monitor private company activity after termination. It authorizes preservation of access events connected to Veil infrastructure. Rebecca glanced at him, then at me. For half a second, she looked uncertain. It passed. Vivian said, restore the license. No. Ethan. No. You are making an emotional decision. I almost laughed. 6 years of humiliation. 6 years sitting at the wrong end of the family table. 6 years watching Julian receive trust one was told I had to earn. And she still thought the emotional one was me. I reached for the Hawthorne signet ring on my right hand. Grandfather had given it to me after the first DNA test suggested I belonged to his bloodline. I had worn it every day, even after the sisters stopped inviting me to family dinners. Even after they introduced Julian as our brother and me as Ethan. Even after I realized the ring was the only thing in that house that openly admitted I existed. I pulled it off, placed it on top of Julian's transfer report. Sophie inhaled. Ethan, Vivian stared at the ring. If you walk out now, don't expect to come back. There it was. The sentence that had ruled my first life. Don't expect to come back. I had spent 6 years terrified of hearing it. Now it felt like a door unlocking. I stood. That's the first thing you've said tonight that sounds like a gift. Vivian's face went still. Claire looked shocked. Olivia lowered her phone. Rebecca did not move. Sophie whispered my name again. Julian watched me carefully now. Not amused. Calculating. I picked up nothing from the table except my own phone. Not the agreement. Not the Hawthorne file. Not the ring. I walked toward the doors. Security, Vivian said. 2 guards stepped forward outside the glass wall. My lawyer, Daniel Ruiz, was already waiting near the elevator. He held up a preservation notice. My client is leaving voluntarily, he said. Any attempt to seize his devices after formal notice will be documented. The guard stopped. Vivian called after me. You are still under investigation. I looked back once. No. Everyone stared. The transfer is under investigation. Then I walked away. The elevator doors closed on my sisters. For 6 years, I had always been the one who stayed. I stayed when Vivian told me family trust had to be earned. I stayed when Claire said grandfather's affection was not proof of identity. I stayed when Rebecca restricted my trust access. I stayed when Olivia used my background as evidence that I was unstable. I stayed when Sophie apologized in private after voting against me in public. I stayed because I thought endurance would eventually turn into belonging. That had been my first mistake. Daniel studied me as the elevator descended. You look unusually calm for a man accused of stealing $18 million. I've had practice. He glanced sideways. With being accused? With losing? The elevator opened. I checked the date. October 14th. Exactly 187 days before Blackstone Bridge. My hand tightened around my phone. Not this time. At 11:58 p.m., I stood in Vale Systems' secure operations room with Daniel and Maya Chun. The Hawthorns believed Vale Systems employed 17 people. They had never bothered to check. 84 analysts, engineers, and forensic specialists worked under our licenses across 3 states. Maya stared at the Sentinel dashboard. You're sure? Yes. Once I switch it into preservation mode, Hawthorne will lose privileged Sentinel processing. They still have their own systems. They'll panic. They're already panicking. The clock changed. 12 hours. I pressed confirm. 5 green division icons turned amber. Hawthorne Global. License terminated. Preservation mode active. 31 seconds later, the first alert appeared. Foundation authentication history deletion request. Then another. Trust document export. Then, counterfeit user profile detected. Name, Ethan Vale. Created 6 weeks earlier. Then the fourth alert. Executive device attempting to delete privileged authentication records. Maya leaned toward the screen. Device owner. I already knew. The screen finished loading. Julian Hawthorne, Executive Tablet 04. Maya looked at me. He's erasing evidence right now. I watched the deletion request enter the immutable archive. In my first life, Julian had erased everything while I begged my sisters for one more chance. This time I leaned back in my chair. Go ahead. Daniel looked at me. What? I watched another deletion attempt fail. Let him erase everything. A second copy locked into the archive. I smiled. I'm watching. By 7:06 the next morning, Hawthorne Global had sent 29 demands for emergency restoration. Vivian sent 11 herself. Rebecca sent 6 legal notices. Claire requested temporary clinical access. Olivia's office wanted a formal comment. Sophie sent 1 message. Please don't make this permanent. I read none of them twice. Maya stood beside the glass wall of Vale Systems' forensic room, drinking terrible coffee. Your family seems upset. They aren't my family. She glanced at me. That changed quickly. No. It took 6 years. On the main screen, Sentinel had preserved 90 days of Hawthorne authentication events before the license terminated. Maya opened the $18 million transfer sequence. The presentation Julian used was manipulated. I know. You haven't seen this version yet. She enlarged the bank record. The recipient account shown in the boardroom ended in 4821. Vale Strategic Holdings also had an account ending in 4821. Convenient. But Maya highlighted another field. The routing number was cropped. She restored the original. Different bank. Different state. Different owner. Crownbridge Advisory. She said. I stared at the name. In my first life, I had discovered Crownbridge 4 hours before my car went off Blackstone Bridge. Then the evidence died with me. Maya continued. 3 payments moved through Crownbridge. 2 others passed through Delmar Consulting and North Peak Strategy before converging in the same holding account. Controlled by, still tracing it. She changed screens. The first authorization came from Sophie Hawthorne's hardware token. My jaw tightened. The second, Julian's Foundation Administrator account. And the final reconciliation, Maya hesitated. Yours. Daniel looked up from the conference table. My client never had a Foundation reconciliation account. Correct. She zoomed in. The profile was created 6 weeks ago. Employee name, Ethan Vale. Employee number, 004172. My real Hawthorne contractor number was 04172. 1 extra 0. Tiny. Deliberate. A counterfeit identity. Daniel said. Built to look legitimate under a fast review. Maya nodded. The device fingerprint that created it is masked, but preservation mode retained enough metadata to trace the privilege chain. How long? Hours, not days. Archive everything first. Already done. That was the difference between this life and the last. Before, I had focused on proving I was innocent. Now I focused on making sure the truth survived. My phone vibrated again. Vivian. I rejected it. 30 seconds later, Vivian. Rejected. Then Claire. Then Sophie. I silenced the phone. Daniel watched. You're not going to answer any of them? They heard me yesterday. At 8:30, we joined a video conference with First Meridian Bank. The bank's senior credit officer looked uncomfortable before anyone spoke. Mr. Vale, we received counsel's notice regarding the Hawthorne Medical Bridge facility. Yes, the guarantee is substantial. 42 million. She nodded. Vale Systems currently supports more than half the secondary security package. Claire did not know that. None of them did. 3 years earlier, Hawthorne Medical's rehabilitation project had exceeded budget after a contractor collapse. Claire had called me at 2 in the morning. Not as a sister. She almost never called me that. She had said, if this project stalls, 800 jobs disappear. I called investors. I negotiated lenders. And when Hawthorne's own balance sheet structure became inconvenient, I quietly placed Vale Systems behind $42 million of emergency support. Claire later thanked Vivian for stabilizing the financing. Vivian never corrected her. I never did either. At the time, I thought one day they would discover what I had done and understand that I belonged. Now that idea felt embarrassing. The bank officer cleared her throat. Under the agreement, withdrawal is permitted following a material misrepresentation involving the guarantor. Daniel answered. The Hawthorne Foundation publicly accused Vale Systems' beneficial owner of an $18 million theft while simultaneously relying on his company's credit. That does satisfy the notification threshold. The hospital will have 30 days to replace support. Yes. Then proceed. The officer looked at me. Mr. Vale, I need to ask directly. Are you intending to force a default? No. Because Hawthorne Medical may characterize this as retaliation. I don't want the hospital to fail. Then why withdraw? Because I'm no longer underwriting people who call me a criminal. Silence. The officer nodded once. That is clear. The meeting ended at 8:47. Claire called at 8:51. This time I answered. Her voice hit me immediately. What did you do? Good morning. You withdrew the Vale guarantee. Yes. That facility treats thousands of patients. It also has 30 days to replace the guarantee. You promised you would protect that project. I did. So this is punishment? No. Then what is it? Risk management. She exhaled sharply. Don't use corporate language with me. You've spent 6 years using clinical language to explain why I should tolerate being treated like an outsider. That is completely different. Is it? You are jeopardizing a medical facility because of a family dispute. No. Your family foundation accused the owner of its guarantor company of theft. Your family foundation. No. She went silent. I repeated it. Not anymore. Ethan, you made that question irrelevant yesterday. You cannot just decide you aren't a Hawthorne because you're angry. I'm not angry. That was almost true. I was angry. But anger no longer controlled the decision. You stood behind Julian while he accused me in front of donors. We were responding to evidence. You were responding to his evidence. You could have stayed and explained. I did that once. What does that mean? Nothing you need to understand. Her voice softened slightly. Grandfather will be devastated. I almost laughed. They always used grandfather when they needed leverage. Then tell him the truth. What truth? That you lost my support because you treated it as family property. I ended the call. At 10, Daniel and I returned to Hawthorne Manor. Not to reconcile. To remove my property. The estate overlooked the river from 6 acres of perfect lawns and gray stone. For 6 years, I had lived in the East Guest Wing. Julian lived in the original air suite. My room contained almost nothing belonging to Hawthorne. 2 computers, a drafting desk, books, a framed photograph of my foster parents outside their old machine shop, a wooden box of letters grandfather said my mother had written before I disappeared as a child. That box was the only thing I packed personally. Everything else was documented by an independent inventory officer. I was disconnecting a private Vale server when Julian appeared in the doorway. He wore a cream sweater and carried coffee. Relaxed, casual, as if he had not tried to erase evidence 12 hours earlier. You brought a lawyer to pack your clothes. I brought a witness. You always make everything ugly. I didn't accuse you of stealing $18 million. No, you shut down the system the entire company relies on. Hawthorne operated before Sentinel, not at its current scale. I looked at him. That was the first honest thing he had said to me in years. He realized it too. His mouth tightened. You can still fix this. Confess. Yes. To something I didn't do. To reality. And what reality is that? His eyes hardened. That this family was fine before you appeared. There it was. Not the theft. Not the investigation. Me. You came here 6 years ago with a DNA report and expected 5 women who had raised me as their brother to suddenly replace me. I expected them to check. They did. No. They checked what you gave them. He went very still. I continued. The first laboratory result was handled through a contractor connected to Marcus Crowe, his father. I had not discovered that name yet in this timeline. But Julian's face changed. Barely. Enough. You sound paranoid. You sound nervous. He looked at the server case. What's on that? Vale property. Hawthorne data belongs to Hawthorne. The Hawthorne data remains on Hawthorne infrastructure. This is Vale code and independently preserved access records. You can't use them. I don't need to use them. I locked the case. I need to make sure you can't delete them. Footsteps sounded behind him. Vivian entered first. Rebecca beside her. Sophie followed. Vivian looked at the cases. Put those down. No. They may contain evidence. Daniel stepped forward. They belong to Vale Systems. Hawthorne has been offered a certified forensic image through an independent examiner. Rebecca held out a document. Litigation hold. A hold prevents destruction. Daniel said. It doesn't transfer ownership. Vivian ignored him. Restore Sentinel. No. Remain here until the audit is complete. No. You created this crisis. I stared at her. Julian presented the accusation. And your reaction destabilized the company. Then your company was too dependent on someone you didn't respect. Sophie spoke quietly. Ethan. The routing number. Everyone turned. She swallowed. You said it didn't match. Vivian's expression cooled. We reviewed that. No. Sophie said. We reviewed the final 4 account digits. Julian sighed. He told you exactly what inconsistency to look for. Of course you found one. That's not how routing numbers work. For the first time, Sophie contradicted him in front of Vivian. Julian looked at her. Something dangerous flashed through his eyes, then vanished. I picked up the final equipment case. Vivian stepped in front of me. If you leave with those servers, you are choosing to separate yourself from this family. No. I met her eyes. You chose that years ago. Her face went pale. I walked around her. At the front doors, the inventory officer handed me the signed property list. I returned my estate key. Julian leaned against the staircase. Where are you going when Vale fails without Hawthorne? I stopped. You really believe Vale exists because of you? Hawthorne gave your company legitimacy. No. I looked back. Hawthorne was the client I was too emotionally compromised to fire. His smile disappeared. Outside, Sophie followed me down the steps. Ethan. I kept walking. You can't just leave. I stopped beside Daniel's car. I already did. This is still your home. No. It can be. For 6 years. You all decided whether I was allowed to belong depending on Julian's mood. That isn't fair. Fair. She flinched. I lowered my voice. You apologized to me after every vote. Her eyes filled. You came to my room after Rebecca froze my trust rights. I was trying to help. You brought food to my apartment after Olivia called me unstable on television. I told you I didn't agree with everything she said. Then you testified that removing my server access was necessary. She looked away. You were under investigation. And Julian wasn't. Silence. You were kind after choosing him. I said, that's not the same as choosing me. She whispered, what do you want me to do? Nothing. That can't be your answer. It is. Where will you go? Home. Her eyes moved toward Hawthorne Manor. This is home. I opened the car door. No. I looked at the mansion one last time. This is where I kept waiting to be wanted. Then I got in. At 12:41 p.m. 14 minutes after we left the estate. Sentinel generated another preservation alert. Sophie Hawthorne. Hardware token history. Deletion attempt. Source device. Julian Hawthorne. Executive tablet 04. I stared at the screen. Daniel read over my shoulder. That's significant. Yes. You sending it to the auditor? Already done. And Sophie? I forwarded the alert. No message. No accusation. No explanation. Only the timestamp. Device fingerprint. And deletion request. 8 minutes passed. Then my phone vibrated. Sophie. One sentence. I never authorized that transfer. I looked at it for several seconds. In my first life, I would have felt hope. I would have called her immediately, asked if she finally believed me, begged her to stand beside me. This time I locked the phone. Maya looked over from the conference room screen. You're not answering? No. Why? I looked at the Hawthorne evidence archive filling with records they had once allowed Julian to destroy. Because whether she believes me isn't the question anymore. I turned back to the screen. The evidence does. Sophie arrived at Vale Systems at 3:18 that afternoon. Alone. No Hawthorne driver. No assistant. No family lawyer. No Julian. That told me more than her message had. She stood outside the security doors in a charcoal coat, one hand wrapped around the strap of her bag, looking like someone who had spent the entire drive arguing with herself. Maya glanced at the lobby camera. Do you want me to send her away? I looked at the screen. In my first life, I would have been halfway downstairs already. Sophie had always been my weakness. Not because she had treated me well, because she had treated me slightly less badly than the others. When you are starving, crumbs can feel like a meal. Let her in, I said. Maya raised an eyebrow but tapped the access panel. Sophie entered the conference room 5 minutes later. Her eyes went immediately to me. You didn't answer. I wasn't required to. She flinched. That reaction used to make me soften. Not anymore. She placed her phone on the table. Julian said you fabricated the deletion request. I leaned back. Then why are you here? Because I want to hear your explanation. No. She stared at me. No. You didn't come for my explanation. Her expression tightened. Then what did I come for? Because some part of you knows his explanation doesn't work. She looked away. Daniel was seated near the end of the table reviewing a chain of custody report. Maya stood beside the wall display. I had deliberately kept both of them in the room. No private conversations. No emotional reinterpretations later. Sophie noticed. You need witnesses to talk to me now? I need witnesses around Hawthorne's. That's cruel. It's procedural. Rebecca would have appreciated the word. Sophie sat. For several seconds. Nobody spoke. Then she unlocked her phone and opened the image I had sent her. The Sentinel alert. Her hardware token ID. The deletion request. Julian's executive device. I didn't authorize the transfer. She said. I know. I didn't authorize anyone to delete the history. I know. Then how did my token approve $18 million? Did Julian ever possess it? Her answer came too quickly. No. I said nothing. She looked at me. He didn't. I opened my laptop. Pulled up a calendar. Selected a date. September 23rd. Where were you that evening? She frowned. What? September 23rd. I don't know. You attended the North River Venture dinner until 9. Her eyes narrowed. How do you know that? You posted photographs. What does that have to do with? Afterward, you went to Julian's penthouse. She stopped. Maya looked at me. Daniel did too. Neither interrupted. Sophie's fingers tightened around her phone. I went there because your authorization token was giving certificate warnings. Her face changed. I continued. Julian told you his security team could update it faster than Hawthorne IT. Her breathing slowed. Memory was catching up. I gave it to him. For how long? I don't know. Think. She closed her eyes. I arrived around 9:40 and left 10:30. That isn't what I asked. She opened her eyes again. How long did he physically have the token? Her face lost color. Maybe 10 minutes. 11. Her head snapped toward me. How do you know that? Because in my first life, I had learned it 3 days too late. Because Sophie had remembered during an argument after the original token logs had already been destroyed. Because I had spent the last hours before my death reconstructing everything no one had believed. But I couldn't say that. So I said, I know how Julian works. No. Her voice was quiet now. You knew the exact date. I held her gaze. And now you know he had the token. That isn't an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She stood abruptly and walked to the window. Vale Systems occupied 2 converted warehouse floors overlooking the river district. Below us, employees crossed between buildings carrying coffee and equipment cases. Sophie watched them. I thought this company had 20 people. 17. According to Vivian. She looked back. You let us believe that? I stopped correcting assumptions that benefited me. That sounds dishonest. I almost laughed. Coming from this family? Her mouth tightened. I didn't apologize. Maya finally stepped forward. We can determine whether the token certificate was duplicated. Sophie turned. How? Your hardware unit keeps a local authentication counter. If the certificate was copied, the server-side sequence and device-side sequence will diverge. Can Julian fake that? He can try? Maya looked at me. But he can't rewrite your physical token without possessing it again. Sophie slowly placed her bag on the table. Then she removed a small black device from the inner pocket. Her Hawthorne Ventures authorization key. You carry it with you now? I asked. Since yesterday. Maya took out an evidence pouch. If we examine this, you'll need to sign consent and chain of custody forms. Sophie hesitated. Will Hawthorne know? Eventually. Julian will know? Yes. She looked at me. What happens if this proves he copied it? Then you tell the auditor when he had it. And after that, investigators decide what it means. No. Her eyes fixed on me. I mean us. I knew the question before she finished speaking. There it was. The thing I had wanted more than innocence in my first life. A sister finally choosing me. I remembered sitting alone in a rented apartment after Hawthorne froze my trust. Sophie had brought groceries. She had cried. She had said she didn't believe I was evil. For one night, I thought I still had someone. The next morning, Rebecca filed to seize Veil Systems servers. Sophie signed the family consent resolution. Private kindness. Public betrayal. Again, what about us? I asked. If I help expose Julian, she stopped. Then tried again. If this proves you were right, can we fix things? No. The answer came so easily it surprised even me. Sophie stared. No, there's nothing to fix. Her eyes filled almost instantly. You don't mean that. I do. You're angry. Of course I'm angry. Then don't make permanent decisions while you're angry. That's what Vivian said about Sentinel. This is different. It always is when you need something from me. She looked as if I had slapped her. I continued before the old version of me could interfere. You want this investigation to become a bridge back to me. I'm trying to make things right. You're trying to correct something that has finally become dangerous to you. That's not fair. No. I pointed toward the authorization key. You gave Julian a device capable of moving Foundation money. I didn't know he would misuse it. And when he accused me, I believed the records. You believed him. I believed what I saw. You saw what he selected. Her jaw trembled. I was confused. So was I? You had more information. I asked you to verify it. She went silent. I remembered that boardroom in the first timeline. Me begging. Sophie unable to look at me. Her whisper, just cooperate. We'll fix it afterward. There was always an afterward with Sophie. After the humiliation. After the vote. After the damage. That was when she became kind. Do you know what I wanted from you 6 years ago? I asked. She shook her head. One time. What? One time where you were kind before it was safe. Her eyes dropped. I was scared. So was I? I thought Julian was our brother. And what did you think I was? She had no answer. Maya placed the consent form in front of her. Sophie sat again. Read every line. Then signed. She handed over the token. Maya sealed it. We'll start immediately. Sophie remained seated. Daniel returned to his documents. The conversation should have ended. It didn't. Sophie whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her. In another life, those 2 words would have broken me. I would have accepted them because I needed them too badly. Now they were simply words. Send a copy of your statement to your personal lawyer. Her lips parted. That's all. That's all. You don't forgive me. I didn't say that. Then do you? I considered the question. No. She closed her eyes. For a second, I hated how much relief I felt saying it. Not because hurting her felt good. Because for once I was not lying to protect someone who had not protected me. She stood. What do you need from me? The truth. Against Julian? Not against anyone. I opened the independent audit portal. Upload the date he possessed the token. Describe the reason he gave you. Consent to examination of your Hawthorne devices. She looked at the form. You want me to testify? I want you to tell the truth. And then, there is no then. She sat at the workstation. Filled in every field. September 23rd. Julian Hawthorne requested possession of my authorization token for a security certificate update. Estimated possession, 11 minutes. No other person had authorization to use the token. She attached calendar records. Location history. Messages from Julian. At 4:11. She signed. At 4:14. The submission entered the external archive. 3 minutes later, Maya returned with the first hardware result. The counters diverge. Sophie stared at her. What does that mean? Your certificate was duplicated. Can you tell when? Maya brought the report onto the screen. Within a 12-minute window. September 23rd. 9:51 p.m. to 10:03 p.m. Sophie's face went completely still. That's when he had it. Yes. Her phone rang. Julian. She looked at the screen. Didn't answer. It rang again. Then a message arrived. We need to talk before Ethan turns this into something it isn't. She showed me. I said nothing. Another message. You know how unstable he becomes when he feels rejected. Sophie's face changed. He said that yesterday. What? That you were doing all this because we chose him. I shrugged. He needs you to think my motive matters more than his evidence. Her phone rang a third time. She declined it. That was the first choice she had made against him in front of me. And I felt nothing. Not victory. Not hope. Only confirmation that it had taken $18 million and a federal-grade evidence trail for one sister to do what I had begged her to do 6 years earlier. Check. Her phone buzzed again. But this time the caller wasn't Julian. Hawthorne Medical. Sophie answered. Hello? Her expression changed immediately. What? She stood. When? Another pause. No. Claire didn't call me. Her eyes found mine. What hospital? She listened. Then lowered the phone. Grandfather collapsed. Every muscle in my body tightened. Where? Hawthorne Rehabilitation Center. I was already reaching for my coat. Sophie stared at me. You're coming. Why did he collapse? I don't know. Ask. She put the phone back to her ear. A few seconds later, her face went pale. He stopped breathing during transfer prep. I froze. Transfer? She nodded slowly. They were preparing to move him to another long-term care facility. What facility? She asked. Listened. Then looked at me. Crownbridge Health Management. Daniel stood immediately. Maya cursed under her breath. The same name receiving stolen foundation money. The same network now trying to remove grandfather from Hawthorne Medical. I grabbed my phone. Sophie whispered. Ethan? I looked at her. This isn't about 18 million anymore. We reached the hospital 32 minutes later. Claire met us outside the intensive care unit wearing blue scrubs beneath a white coat. Julian stood beside her. Of course he did. The moment Claire saw me, her face hardened. You should not be here. Why was grandfather being transferred? This is a medical matter. He's my grandfather. Your legal family status is unresolved. Julian stepped closer. Not now. Ethan. I ignored him. What facility? Claire's jaw tightened. You know the name. Yes. Sophie stepped forward. Claire. The same company appears in the foundation transfers. Claire turned. What? Julian answered before she could say more. He's feeding you connections because he wants everything to look coordinated. I took out my phone. Who authorized the transfer? Claire looked at me. I did not say there was a finalized transfer. Who authorized it? Administrative staff. Under whose credentials? Her silence answered. I opened a file. 8 months earlier, grandfather had signed a medical governance addendum. Claire was primary decision maker. I was alternate whenever medical decisions intersected directly with the disputed Hawthorne Identity Trust. Claire stared at the document. This doesn't supersede my authority while I'm present. It does if your administrative credentials were used while you were somewhere else. She froze. Sophie looked between us. What does that mean? I turned the screen. Sentinel had preserved a remote authentication event from Hawthorne Medical at 3:47 that morning. Claire Hawthorne. Administrative credential. Transfer authorization request. Originating workstation. Hawthorne Tower. Executive floor. Claire's face drained. I was here at 3:47. I know. Julian stepped between us. This is exactly what I warned you about. Claire barely looked at him. Which workstation? I enlarged the device information. Executive Administrative Station 22E. Assigned department. Office of Julian Hawthorne. Julian shook his head immediately. That floor has dozens of employees. Then give them your device history. You don't get to demand my private records. No. Claire's voice was quiet. Everyone turned. She looked at Julian. I do. His expression changed. Claire. A patient stopped breathing during a transfer authorized under my name. It wasn't my workstation. Then let security prove that. Julian looked at Sophie. You see what he's doing? Sophie said nothing. That silence was new. Claire called a nurse. Pull every authorization event on grandfather's profile for the last 6 weeks. The nurse hesitated. Doctor. Hawthorne now. We moved into a consultation room. The audit appeared 15 minutes later. 3 altered contact permissions. 2 transfer inquiries. 1 medical proxy modification request. All submitted under Claire's administrator profile. Claire stared at the screen. I didn't approve these. Julian folded his arms. Then Ethan did. I looked at him. Submit your devices. This is not a courtroom. No. I leaned forward. It's a hospital. Which makes refusing worse. Claire turned to him. Give security your company tablet. You can't be serious. I am. My devices contain confidential family communications. So do mine. Her voice became colder. Someone used my account to alter a patient's care. Julian said nothing. That silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Then he stood. I'm not participating in this circus. He walked out. Claire watched him leave. For the first time since I had returned to the Hawthorne family, she did not follow him. A doctor entered 20 minutes later. Arthur Hawthorne is stable. Claire stood. What happened? Respiratory suppression. We corrected it quickly. Cause. We're still reviewing. Can he speak? Briefly. Claire looked at me. Then away. Go. I entered the intensive care room alone. Grandfather looked smaller than I remembered. Machines surrounded the bed. His eyes opened when I approached. Ethan. I'm here. His fingers moved weakly. I took his hand. Blue envelope. I leaned closer. What? My safe. What's in it? His breathing became shallow. Julian. I waited. Proposal. Which proposal? His fingers tightened around mine. Don't let them. His eyes fluttered. Don't let them sign for me. The monitor changed rhythm. A nurse stepped toward us. I moved back. Grandfather closed his eyes. Behind the glass, Claire and Sophie were watching me. Julian was nowhere in sight. And for the first time, I understood that the $18 million might not have been the crime. It might have been the price of removing me before Grandfather could tell the truth. Claire did not speak until we reached Grandfather's private office. The room sat on the top administrative floor of the rehabilitation center, away from the patient wards. Grandfather had refused to run Hawthorne Medical, but he kept an office there because Claire insisted he remain close during rehabilitation. A portrait of my mother hung behind the desk. I had seen it only twice. Both times Claire had changed the subject when I asked about her. Now she crossed the room toward a concealed wall panel. Sophie followed. Daniel arrived 10 minutes later after speaking with hospital counsel. I stayed near the door. Claire entered a code. The panel opened. Inside was a steel safe. Who has access? I asked. Claire didn't look at me. Grandfather. Vivian. Rebecca. Me. She paused. And Julian. Not me. No? Sophie glanced toward me. That mattered. Not emotionally. Legally. Claire entered a second code. The safe opened. Inside were estate records, medical proxies, trust files, sealed envelopes, and one blue document sleeve. Claire stared at it. That must be what he meant. She took it out. The first page carried the title, Hawthorne Identity Trust, Proposed Final Heir Determination. Sophie moved beside her. Claire read silently, then stopped. Her face hardened. Read it, I said. She looked at me. Out loud. She did. The proposed amendment recognizes Julian Hawthorne as the permanent family heir for all trust and governance purposes. Sophie inhaled. Claire continued. All future biological identity challenges shall be deemed legally non-dispositive absent unanimous approval by the Hawthorne Family Council. I laughed once. Rebecca would have loved that sentence. Claire kept reading. All disputed trust voting rights transfer temporarily to Julian Hawthorne pending final settlement. Then, all technology developed or maintained through Hawthorne property may be placed under family trusteeship. Sentinel. Veil systems. Everything. The exact mechanism they had used to strip me in my first life. Claire flipped to the signature page. Blank. Then she noticed the red ink across the front. Grandfather's handwriting. Rejected. Independent DNA review required. Ethan must be present. Sophie covered her mouth. There was another note clipped behind the amendment. Claire read it. Julian pressured me repeatedly to sign while I was medicated. Rebecca must independently review chain of authority. Ethan must receive a copy before any vote. Silence filled the office. I looked at the date. 4 days earlier, Julian had known Grandfather intended to involve me. Then Grandfather's contacts were altered. Then a transfer request appeared under Claire's credentials. Then he stopped breathing. Claire sat down. He said Grandfather was becoming paranoid. Who, Julian? She stared at the note. He said the medication was making him confused. He told me not to upset him with trust disputes. Sophie whispered, You believed him. Claire looked at her. So did you? Sophie said nothing. I walked toward the safe terminal. Pull access history. Claire's head lifted. Why? Because Julian claimed I manipulated trust documents. Her eyes narrowed. I continued. If I never had access to this safe, that claim becomes difficult. Claire entered the audit menu. User history appeared. Vivian. Rebecca. Claire. Julian. Grandfather. No Ethan. Not once. Sophie stared. You were never at it. No, Claire said quietly. I decided your legal status was too uncertain. Of course she had. You personally blocked it. Yes. The irony was almost beautiful. The restriction Claire had imposed because she distrusted me now became evidence that I could not have altered the documents Julian blamed on me. I looked at her. Congratulations. Her face tightened. What? You finally found a use for not trusting me. Sophie looked down. Claire flinched. I was trying to protect grandfather. You were protecting the version of the family you preferred. That is not fair. You keep saying that. Her voice rose. I had a responsibility to him. And you handed Julian access. He was family. So was I? The words hung there. Claire stared at me. 6 years. That was how long I had waited to say it without needing her answer. Her voice dropped. I should have checked. Yes. No comfort. No absolution. Just yes. She closed her eyes briefly. Then turned back to the terminal. Hospital security needs this. Independent security. She looked at me. You don't trust my department? I don't trust anyone whose credentials are already compromised. Daniel nodded. He's right. Claire gave him a sharp look. Daniel did not care. We need a third-party image of the access logs before internal administrators touch anything. Claire picked up her phone. Within 15 minutes, she had ordered an external forensic review. Then she made another call. Remove Julian Hawthorne from Arthur Hawthorne's approved visitor list. The security director on the other end clearly questioned her. Claire's voice hardened. Until the credential investigation is complete. She ended the call. Sophie watched her. That's the first time you've ever restricted him. Claire looked at the blue envelope. I should have done it yesterday. No, I said. She looked at me. You should have checked 6 years ago. The sentence hurt. I saw it. I let it. Claire leaned back against the desk. I thought you hated him because he had our life. I did. She seemed surprised by the admission. I continued. I hated that he had the room that was supposed to be mine. The photographs. The birthdays. The memories. I hated that all 5 of you looked at him and saw a brother without needing evidence. Then I pointed toward the safe. And looked at me and saw a problem requiring documentation. Claire swallowed. I thought time would fix it. You thought I would eventually become convenient. That isn't what I meant. It doesn't matter what you meant. Her eyes filled. What can I do now? Keep grandfather alive. She waited. Preserve every record. Another pause. Report your stolen credentials. And us? There it was again. Sophie had asked the same thing. Apparently, my sisters were beginning to discover relationships only after losing access to them. There is no us. Claire stared. You don't mean that. I do. You're my brother. Biology didn't stop you yesterday. That was before evidence threatened Julian. Her face went white. That's not why. Then what changed? She looked at the red handwritten note. Nothing. Exactly. Evidence. Not loyalty. At 7:40 that evening, Claire filed a formal medical security incident report. It identified her credentials as compromised. It preserved grandfather's records. It named Julian's executive floor as the origin of the unauthorized transfer request. By 8, Olivia called me. I answered only because Daniel had already sent me a copy of her scheduled press statement. Her voice was cold. You've manipulated Claire into filing an accusation against Julian. I didn't write her report. You brought private security data into a hospital. Your hospital's credentials were compromised. Claire is under enormous stress. So was I yesterday. This is not about you. I actually laughed. The press release on my screen says otherwise. Silence. Then, you've seen it. Yes. Olivia had scheduled a press conference for 10 the next morning. The statement identified me as the principal suspect in the $18 million foundation theft. It also claimed I had retaliated by disrupting Hawthorne Security Services and threatening members of the family. I recognized the language. Almost word for word from my first life. You can still cancel it. I said, we have donors asking questions. Then tell them there is an independent investigation. We need clarity. No, you need control. That is unfair. There was that word again. You intend to publish certainty before the audit begins. We have evidence. You have Julian's evidence. Her voice sharpened. You always hated that the public accepted him. I hated that my sisters preferred his story to verification. You'll have an opportunity to respond after our statement. That sentence almost stopped my breathing. Same words. First life. Same promise. Afterward. Always afterward. I looked through the glass wall at Maya. She was reviewing the original business call archive. Olivia. What? If you play the audio Julian gave you tomorrow. Make sure it's complete. A pause. What are you talking about? You'll find out. I ended the call. Maya turned her monitor toward me. We found the original. The edited recording Olivia intended to broadcast contained my voice saying, "When this is over, you won't have a name, a home, or a family. I'll erase you." In my first life, that sentence had spread everywhere. I had spent weeks saying I never threatened Julian. No one cared. Maya played the full call. 6 weeks earlier, Julian had demanded that I remove a fraud alert tied to an unauthorized vendor account. My original sentence was, "When this review is over, the unauthorized vendor profile will not have a registered name, a home office address, or a family ownership flag attached to Hawthorne. I'll erase it from the approved list." Maya highlighted the waveform. 11 cuts. Daniel leaned closer. Obvious, to an examiner. To a reporter, once we show both versions. I sat back. In my first life, Olivia had used her entire network to destroy me. Tomorrow she planned to do it again. 200 journalists, investors, donors, directors, cameras, everything Julian needed to convict me publicly. Daniel watched my face. "You want an injunction?" "No." He frowned. "We can seek emergency relief tonight." "No." "Then what are you planning?" I opened the complete boardroom video. Julian presenting the cropped account. Me requesting the full routing number. Vivian refusing delay. Rebecca pushing the cooperation agreement. Sophie standing behind Julian. Claire telling me resistance made me look guilty. Olivia warning me about donors. All of it. Let her hold the conference. Daniel understood first. "You want them to publish. I want them to finish." Maya smiled slightly. I scheduled the evidence package. Boardroom footage. Original audio. Bank routing report. Crownbridge ownership structure. Sophie's token copy analysis. Claire's credential breach report. Release time, 10:05 a.m. 5 minutes after Olivia's press conference began. Daniel studied the schedule. That is aggressive. They wanted witnesses. I looked at the list of confirmed attendees. 200 reporters and financial analysts. They're getting witnesses. The next morning, Hawthorne Media's press theater was full before 9:45. Olivia had always understood spectacle. The stage was framed by silver Hawthorne Foundation logos. A giant screen displayed the words, "Foundation Integrity Review." Julian stood near the curtain in a dark suit. "Come again." Recovered. He saw me enter through the side aisle with Daniel and Maya. His eyes narrowed. Olivia approached immediately. "You weren't invited. The statement concerns me. You'll respond afterward." I almost smiled. "No." Her expression tightened. "This event is not a courtroom." "Good. What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you build a room full of witnesses." She lowered her voice. "If you disrupt this, security will remove you. Do it on camera." Her jaw clenched. The stage manager called her name. Olivia turned toward Daniel. "If your client releases confidential Hawthorne material, we will pursue every available remedy." Daniel handed her the preservation notice. The board recording belongs to the foundation and was made in the presence of outside trustees. Selectively publishing edited evidence while suppressing the complete record may create more problems than my client releasing it. She looked at me. "You planned this?" "No." I checked my phone. 10 a.m. I learned. Olivia walked onto the stage. The lights rose. Julian joined her. 200 people went silent. I sat in the fourth row. Maya beside me. Daniel on my other side. Olivia began. "Yesterday evening, the Hawthorne Foundation discovered evidence of a substantial unauthorized transfer involving Ethan Vale." My photograph appeared behind her. Not a professional image. A photograph from the first month after I returned to Hawthorne Manor. Exhausted, unshaven, angry after 3 consecutive identity interviews. Selected to make me look unstable. Exactly what she had done before. She continued. "Mr. Vale responded to our inquiry by terminating critical security services and issuing threats against members of the Hawthorne family." Julian stepped forward with a solemn expression. The edited audio played. My voice filled the theater. "When this is over, you won't have a name, a home, or a family. I'll erase you." Murmurs spread. I looked at my phone. 10:03, Julian spoke. "I never wanted this conflict to become public. Of course, I've always considered Ethan part of our family, but he has struggled with his place since arriving." 10:04. He believed I had taken something from him. That part was almost true. I tried to reassure him. "No." He became increasingly resentful. 23 seconds. Olivia looked toward the cameras. The Hawthorne Foundation must protect charitable assets regardless of private family conflict. 10 seconds. Julian looked directly at me. For just a moment. He smiled. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 10:05. Phones began vibrating across the theater. 1, then 10, then dozens. A reporter in the front row looked down. Another opened an email. Olivia's producer pressed a hand to his earpiece. Julian's smile disappeared. Behind them, the main screen flickered. Maya whispered, "Release confirmed." The complete boardroom recording had gone live. The room had not seen the truth yet. But for the first time in 2 lives, Julian no longer controlled what they were about to see. The first reporter opened the evidence package before Olivia finished her next sentence. I saw it happen. His eyes shifted from the stage to his phone, then back to the stage, then down again. A woman from the financial press leaned toward him. He turned the screen. Her expression changed. Across the theater, phones began lighting up one after another. Julian noticed. He kept speaking anyway. That was always his instinct. Control the room before the room understood what had happened. Ethan has spent years struggling with resentment. He said, that resentment has now turned into sabotage. The main screen behind him flickered. Olivia's producer moved quickly toward the control booth. He was too late. Maya had released the complete boardroom recording to every verified media contact. Outside trustee, foundation auditor, and major donor registered for the event. The footage opened with Julian standing beside the $18 million transfer report. Then my voice. Show the full routing number. Julian on screen answered, the account number is sufficient. Then me again. No. The final 4 digits are sufficient to create an impression. I want the routing number. In the theater, several reporters began typing immediately. Olivia stopped speaking. Julian looked toward the screen. The video continued. Vivian refusing to pause the accusation. Rebecca pushing the cooperation agreement toward me. Claire saying that refusing to surrender my devices would look suspicious. Sophie standing silent. Olivia herself warning me that the donors needed certainty. No one in the room could pretend the accusation had been based on an independent review. It had been based on Julian's presentation. A reporter stood. Ms. Hawthorne. Olivia stared at him. He continued. The complete board recording shows Mr. Vale requested the routing number before the internal review was completed. Why did your statement describe the transfer as confirmed? Olivia's producer whispered urgently into her earpiece. She ignored him. The foundation was acting on the information available at the time. Information provided by whom? Silence. The reporter did not sit. Was the financial summary prepared by Julian Hawthorne's office? Julian stepped toward the microphone. The summary was produced by the foundation review team. Maya sent the second file, the bank routing report. A new set of alerts appeared across reporters' screens. Another journalist stood. The recipient account wasn't Vale Strategic Holdings. Julian's face remained controlled. The account was structured to appear through multiple entities. No. The reporter looked down at the report. The routing number belongs to a Delaware commercial bank. Vale Strategic Holdings uses a New York account. The actual beneficiary is Crownbridge Advisory. Olivia turned toward Julian. He did not look at her. Another reporter raised her voice. Mr. Hawthorne, why did your presentation crop the routing number? It was irrelevant to the initial finding. It appears extremely relevant now. The room changed. You could feel it. 5 minutes earlier, I had been the accused man sitting under cameras. Now every question moved toward Julian. He still believed he could recover. That was his weakness. He had spent years succeeding because my sisters always allowed him to explain first. Public rooms were less forgiving. He lifted one hand. Crownbridge is a consulting structure used by several Hawthorne-affiliated projects. Its appearance does not eliminate Ethan's involvement. I leaned toward Maya. Release the ownership tree. She tapped once. The Crownbridge file went live. Crownbridge Advisory. Parent entity, Crownbridge Holdings. Subsidiary, Meridian Reputation Group. Client relationship, Hawthorne Media Crisis Communications. A third reporter stood. Ms. Hawthorne, your media division hired a Crownbridge subsidiary. Olivia looked toward the screen. What? Her producer whispered again. This time she listened. Her face lost color. The reporter continued. Meridian Reputation Group received payments 3 days before the foundation supposedly discovered the $18 million transfer. Julian finally looked at Olivia. She stared back. What payments? He lowered his voice. Not here. That was the wrong answer. Olivia stepped away from him. What payments? I could almost see 6 years of trust straining between them. Maya released the invoices. The documents showed Hawthorne Media paying Meridian Reputation Group for narrative stabilization. Attached were draft talking points. Unverified biological claimant. Volatile response pattern. Financial motive. Potential digital retaliation. Every line described me. Every document was created before the board meeting. Before Julian supposedly discovered the theft. Before I terminated Sentinel. Before I had done anything he later called retaliation. Olivia read the first page on the stage monitor. Her mouth opened slightly. The room went completely silent. She looked at Julian. You told me this was contingency planning. He said nothing. You said Vivian authorized pre-crisis preparation. Olivia, you said the risk team expected possible reputational fallout. Because they did. The risk team? Her voice sharpened. Were you? Julian glanced toward the cameras. That was all Olivia needed to see. Even now, he was not thinking about the lie. He was thinking about optics. She stepped closer. Did you tell Meridian to prepare material describing Ethan as unstable before the transfer was discovered? Julian's jaw tightened. It was prudent. You told me the transfer had been found yesterday. It had. Then why was the public narrative ready 3 days earlier? Because I expected escalation. From what? He looked at me. From him. Olivia followed his gaze. I did not move. Did not smile. Did not give her anything. She turned back. You expected Ethan to react to an accusation that had not happened yet. Julian's composure cracked for the first time. You're letting him frame this. No. Her voice became very quiet. You framed it. The theater erupted. Questions came from every direction. Who funded Meridian? Was foundation money used? Did Crownbridge receive the missing funds? Was the media campaign prepared before the accusation? Olivia held up a hand. No one stopped. Julian stepped toward her. Take control. The words were low, but the microphone caught them. The room heard. Olivia turned slowly. What did you say? He realized the mistake. Too late. Take control. He repeated. Softer. This is becoming chaotic. For years, Olivia had believed controlling narratives was a skill, a responsibility, a family service. Julian had praised her for it. Now, in front of hundreds of people, he spoke to her like an employee whose performance had failed. Something in her expression changed. She faced the cameras. The statement issued this morning relied on materials that are now disputed. Julian stared at her. Olivia. She raised one hand. I'm not finished. The entire theater fell silent. The allegation that Ethan Vale issued a personal threat was based on an edited recording. Another reporter called out. Are you retracting it? Olivia swallowed. Yes. Julian stepped forward. You don't have authority to. I am the president of Hawthorne Media. And this is a foundation matter. You gave my division the recording. I gave you evidence. You gave me 11 cuts. His face went white. Maya had already released the waveform analysis. Olivia looked toward me for the first time since the press conference began. There was no apology in her expression yet. Only shock. Maybe shame. Maybe anger that she had been used. She said, Hawthorne Media will provide all communications with Meridian Reputation Group and Crownbridge to the independent auditor. Julian moved closer. You're handing Ethan a weapon. Olivia turned. No. For the first time. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone other than him. I'm handing the auditor my records. The press conference collapsed after that. Not physically. Structurally. The stage still existed. The lights remained on. The Hawthorne Foundation logo stayed behind them. But the event no longer belonged to Olivia. Or Julian. Reporters began asking questions faster than the microphones could rotate. Vivian appeared from the front row. She had arrived late. Her expression was unreadable. Rebecca stood beside her holding a tablet. Sophie sat near the aisle. Claire remained at the hospital. 5 sisters had begun the previous day behind Julian. Now one was at the hospital investigating his office. One had submitted token evidence. One was publicly retracting part of his story. 2 still stood beside the family structure. Not necessarily beside him. The difference mattered. By 11:15, the conference officially ended. Olivia stayed on stage answering questions for another 20 minutes. Julian disappeared backstage. Vivian followed. Rebecca remained near the legal team. Sophie came toward me. You knew this would happen. Yes. You let Olivia go through with it. Yes. Sophie looked disturbed. You could have warned her. I looked at her. She had the full board recording. What? Outside trustees had access. She could have requested it. Sophie went quiet. I continued. She chose Julian's version because it was easier. You wanted her embarrassed. No. I looked toward the stage where Olivia was still speaking to reporters. I wanted the complete evidence public before anyone could erase it. That's not the same thing. No. I stood. But if public embarrassment is what finally makes someone check the truth, I'm not going to protect them from it. Sophie did not follow when I left. At 12:38, Olivia arrived at Veil Systems. No cameras. No assistant. No Hawthorne legal counsel. Daniel led her into conference room 2. She placed a black encrypted phone on the table. Maya can image this. I looked at it. What is it? My Hawthorne Media executive device. You're voluntarily surrendering it to the independent examiner. She sat across from me. I also sent every Crownbridge and Meridian communication from my department. Maya checked the audit portal. They're coming through. Olivia looked at me. I didn't know the funding source. I believe you. She seemed surprised. That's it. What do you want? I don't know. That's unusual for you. Her mouth tightened. I remembered Olivia from my first life. Standing beneath studio lights. Calling me volatile. Saying the family had tried to help me. Saying my behavior reflected an escalating pattern of instability. That interview had destroyed every investor conversation Veil Systems had for months. I had called her afterward. 23 times. She never answered. Now she was sitting in my conference room. I believed Julian. She said, I know. I thought he was protecting the foundation. I know. I thought you reacted because you hated that we loved him. That one landed. She saw it. I didn't hide it. I did hate that. Olivia looked down. Then he was right about something. He was. Silence. I continued. He was wrong about what that meant. What did it mean? That I spent 6 years trying to earn something you gave him without asking. Olivia swallowed. I should have called you. You had 6 years. I mean yesterday. So do I. She looked confused. I leaned back. You think this started with $18 million? For us. It did. Exactly. She flinched. At 1:05, Maya opened a new file. Ethan. I looked over. She had traced one of the Crownbridge payments. Not to Meridian. To Blackthorn Acquisition Partners. Daniel stood. What is Blackthorn? Olivia answered before Maya could. A private equity group. Her face changed. We rejected an acquisition approach from them last year. Maya zoomed in. This doesn't look rejected. A $6.2 million payment from Crownbridge had purchased participation rights in a Blackthorn acquisition vehicle. The vehicle was structured to accumulate interests tied to Hawthorne Global Debt. Olivia stared. Who approved this? Foundation funds were used indirectly. Maya said, but the authorization chain is obscured. Daniel looked at me. The $18 million may be funding a control transaction. That changed the scale of everything. This wasn't just theft. Julian wasn't stealing and hiding. He was buying leverage. Over Hawthorne itself. Olivia stood. I'm calling Vivian. Don't. She stopped. Why? Because we don't know who else is involved. She needs to know. She needs to know through the auditor. Olivia stared at me. You don't trust her? No. She's our sister. That hasn't been a credential I recognize for a while. Olivia looked away. At 1:22, Rebecca's legal office filed an emergency application seeking temporary control of Veil Systems servers. Daniel's phone buzzed. He opened the document, then slowly looked at me. What? He turned the tablet. Rebecca's filing relied on a Hawthorne trust amendment. The document claimed, all software developed while a disputed biological claimant resided on Hawthorne property became subject to family trusteeship during identity investigation. Veil Systems assets could therefore be temporarily placed under Hawthorne control. At the bottom, electronic approval. Rebecca Hawthorne. Date, March 8th, 2:14 p.m. I stared at the timestamp, then laughed. Olivia looked at me. What? Rebecca didn't sign this. How do you know? I remembered March 8th. A charity conference in Geneva. Rebecca had flown overnight. In my first life, the trust amendment had been used to seize my servers. I had never questioned the signature timing. Not until after everything was gone. Because at 2:14 p.m. on March 8th, I said, Rebecca was over the Atlantic. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Do you have proof? Flight records. Olivia stared at the document. Then at me. You knew this would happen too. I said nothing. She stepped closer. Ethan. I know Julian. No. Her voice lowered. You know specific things. I closed the file. Then maybe you should spend less time asking how I know and more time asking why he keeps doing exactly what I expect. At 3:40, Rebecca called. I answered. You received the application. She said, yes. You will not remove or alter any Veil Systems infrastructure until the court rules. I'm preserving everything. This document gives Hawthorne temporary authority. No, it does. You should check your own signature. Silence. What? March 8th. Another pause. 2:14 p.m. What about it? Where were you? She did not answer immediately. Then, I was traveling. Where? Geneva. No. My voice was calm. You were flying to Geneva. Rebecca went silent. I continued. Your signature certificate was used inside Hawthorne Tower while you were in international airspace. That's impossible. Good. I looked at Daniel. Now you understand why I want an independent examiner. Her breathing changed. Send me the record. No. Ethan. The auditor already has it. You are withholding evidence from Hawthorne Counsel. You are Hawthorne Counsel. That is exactly why, and you just filed a court application using a document you may not have signed. Silence. For the first time in 6 years. Rebecca had no immediate legal answer. I ended the call. Outside the conference room, Maya was already tracing certificate logs. Olivia stood near the door. What happens now? I looked at the forged trust amendment. Now your lawyer's sister discovers that documents can lie too. Rebecca arrived at the courthouse 2 mornings later wearing the expression she used when she had already decided how a room would end. She had always been the most difficult of my sisters to argue with. Vivian could be challenged on business. Claire could be forced toward evidence through professional ethics. Olivia could be shaken when public facts moved faster than narrative. Sophie could be reached through doubt. Rebecca was different. Rebecca believed procedure was morality. If a document was signed, filed, notarized, certified, or entered into an official record, she treated it as more reliable than any human being, including me, especially me. The hearing concerned one issue. Could Hawthorne obtain temporary control over Veil Systems infrastructure during the identity and fraud investigation? Rebecca sat behind outside counsel. She was not arguing personally. That mattered. She knew there was now a problem with her own signature. But she had not withdrawn the filing. Julian sat beside her. Vivian sat behind them. Olivia and Sophie were in the gallery. Claire remained with grandfather. Daniel leaned toward me. She looks angry. She looks uncertain. Same thing for her. Usually. The Hawthorne lawyer began. Veil Systems operated extensively from Hawthorne-controlled premises during Mr. Veil's residency at the family estate. Daniel slid a document toward me. I knew where this was going. The lawyer continued. The trust amendment grants temporary trusteeship over intellectual property materially developed through Hawthorne infrastructure during a disputed heirship period. The judge looked down, and this amendment was approved by Ms. Rebecca Hawthorne. The lawyer hesitated. Yes. Rebecca's face did not move. The judge continued. Mr. Ruiz. Daniel stood. The document is forged. A murmur moved through the gallery. Rebecca closed her eyes for half a second. Julian leaned toward her. She did not respond. Daniel continued. Not merely disputed. Technically impossible as executed. He submitted the flight records. Rebecca Hawthorne. March 8th. Flight HJ 441. New York to Geneva. Departure 10:32 a.m. Eastern. Satellite connectivity disabled during the relevant interval. The judge looked toward Hawthorne Counsel. Your filing shows execution at 2:14 p.m. Eastern. Yes, Your Honor. Daniel submitted the certificate access logs. The electronic signature was issued through a hardware credential physically connected to a Hawthorne Tower workstation at 2:14 p.m. The judge looked at Rebecca. Were you at Hawthorne Tower? No. Her voice was quiet. Did you authorize anyone to use your credential? No. Julian turned toward her. Your token may have been cloned. Rebecca looked at him. By whom? He paused, then glanced toward me. She saw it. I watched the exact moment she recognized the pattern. Sophie's token. Claire's credentials. Now hers. Julian said. Ethan had extensive security access. Rebecca's face hardened. Answer the question. He frowned. What? Who had physical access to my legal token? Rebecca. This isn't. Who? The judge looked over his glasses. Mr. Hawthorne, you are not a witness at present. Julian leaned back. Rebecca's hands stayed folded. But I knew her. She was furious. Not at me. Not yet. At the possibility that a document had made her look careless. Daniel continued. The signature certificate originated from Hawthorne Tower Workstation 19C. The device assignment appeared. Executive Legal Liaison Suite. Shared Administrative Access. Rebecca Hawthorne Legal Office. Julian Hawthorne Executive Office. Outside counsel looked toward Rebecca. She whispered something. He nodded reluctantly. The judge asked, "Can either party identify the device used?" Daniel answered, "The independent examiner can." Preliminary hardware metadata ties the session to an executive docking station assigned to Mr. Julian Hawthorne's office. Julian stood. "This is absurd." The judge looked up. "Sit down." He did. Barely. Daniel then moved to the second Hawthorne claim. Even if the trust amendment failed, Hawthorne argued Sentinel belonged to the family because it had been materially developed while I lived on the estate. This was the part one had been waiting for. Outside counsel displayed internal Hawthorne emails discussing Sentinel integrations. Mr. Vail used Hawthorne test data, Hawthorne physical infrastructure, and Hawthorne personnel to improve the platform. Daniel stood. Improve. Perhaps. Create. No. He called Maya. She took the witness chair. Daniel asked, "When was the first functional Sentinel prototype created?" 7 years before Hawthorne's current enterprise deployment. When did Ethan Vail first reside at Hawthorne Manor? For years after the first prototype. The original development archive appeared. Old machine shop server. Timestamped commits. Vendor fraud scripts. Invoice anomaly detection. Authentication checks. All created under my foster mother's manufacturing company. A photograph appeared. Me at 21. Standing beside a dirty workshop terminal. No Hawthorne logo. No mansion. No trust. No family money. Just me. Rebecca stared at the screen. So did Vivian. Maya continued. The first system was built after an accounts employee at Vail Machine Works altered vendor banking information. Daniel asked, "Did Hawthorne provide resources?" No. Did Hawthorne own any part of Vail Machine Works? No. Did Ethan know the Hawthorne family at the time? No. That last answer mattered more than the technical record. For 6 years, my sisters had looked at everything I built and assumed Hawthorne had somehow enabled it. The evidence now showed the opposite. Sentinel had existed before them. Vail Systems had existed before their approval. My ability had existed before their name. Outside counsel tried another direction. Sentinel expanded dramatically during Mr. Vail's residence at the estate. Maya nodded. Yes. So Hawthorne contributed to its growth. As a client, the gallery reacted. Maya continued. Hawthorne paid below-market licensing fees. Vail Systems absorbed substantial integration costs because Mr. Vail approved a family concession. Vivian's head turned toward me. I did not look back. Daniel submitted the commercial comparison. Hawthorne had paid roughly 31% of market rate for 4 years. The unpaid difference was worth millions. The company they believed supported me had been receiving a discount from me. Outside counsel sat down. The judge ruled before lunch. Hawthorne's emergency control request was denied. Vail Systems remained fully independent. The trust amendment would be referred for forensic examination. No Hawthorne party could access Vail servers without neutral examiner approval. I had lost this exact argument in my first life. Back then, Rebecca had walked out of court believing procedure had protected the family. This time she remained seated after everyone else began moving. Julian stood. "Come on." She didn't. "Rebecca." She looked at him. "Did you have access to my token?" He frowned. "No." "Did your office?" Administrative staff had cross-suite access. "That wasn't my question." Julian lowered his voice. "You're emotional." Her face changed. I almost smiled. "Wrong sister. Wrong word." Rebecca stood slowly. "You filed the trust amendment with my signature." "I did not." "Your legal team relied on it. Because it was in the trust archive. You told me grandfather approved it." "He did." "The signature page is blank." "He intended to sign." "Then why was my approval attached?" Julian glanced around. "Not here." Rebecca laughed once. Sharp. Humorless. That answer is becoming very popular in this family. He walked away. Rebecca watched him go, then turned toward me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I knew what she meant. The signature. The whole thing. What whole thing? That Sentinel existed before Hawthorne. That the trust clause was structurally impossible. That my certificate was compromised. I told you the transfer evidence was wrong. That is not the same. In the first meeting, I asked for independent examination. You terminated the platform and walked out. Yes. Why not give me everything? Because last time I had. Because last time I gave her every administrator key I owned. Because last time she used legal process to seize the rest. I looked at her. I trusted you enough once. Her brows drew together. What does that mean? You chose the paperwork over me. I'm a lawyer. That was never the problem. What was? You treated procedure as proof of honesty. Her face tightened. Documents matter. They do. I looked toward the courtroom doors. Which is why it should bother you that Julian knew exactly how to use one. She went silent. Then, do you think I'm involved? No. She looked surprised. Then why are you acting like I'm the enemy? You filed to take my company. Based on the trust record. You could have checked your own signature. I had no reason to believe. Exactly. Her mouth closed. There it was. No reason to believe. That phrase had defined my place in the family. No reason to believe Ethan. No reason to check Julian. No reason to question the document. Until the lie threatened them personally. Rebecca looked away. What do you want? Withdraw every filing based on unverified trust documents. I can't just dismantle Hawthorne's legal position. You can stop using forged evidence. That still requires confirmation. Then confirm it. She stared at me for several seconds, then walked away. At 4:20 that afternoon, Daniel received notice. Rebecca had moved to suspend Hawthorne's own emergency application pending independent signature review. Not withdrawn. Suspended. Very Rebecca. But it was enough. At 6:05, she appeared at Vale Systems. No Julian. No Vivian. She carried 2 encrypted drives. Daniel met her at reception. What are these? My communications archive. With whom? Julian. Grandfather. The trust office. Blackthorn Capital. I looked up. Blackthorn? She nodded. I found references in Julian's legal correspondence. We moved into the forensic room. Maya imaged both drives. Rebecca stood rigidly beside the table. I'm providing these voluntarily. Daniel said, that will be documented. She looked at me. Don't make this into an apology. I wasn't planning to. Her eyes flashed, then softened. Barely. The archive contained 4 months of transaction drafts. Side letters. Acquisition models. Trust control diagrams. Julian had been negotiating with Blackthorn Capital through intermediaries. The plan was larger than we thought. Blackthorn intended to acquire distressed Hawthorne debt and minority positions through multiple vehicles. Julian would consolidate family voting rights. Then several divisions could be sold or restructured without full opposition from the trust. Sentinel was a problem. My trust rights were a problem. Grandfather was a problem. And I was the easiest problem to remove publicly. Maya opened a structure chart. The missing 18 million funded participation in this vehicle. Rebecca stared. Foundation money. Yes. Julian used charity money to buy leverage against Hawthorne. Daniel nodded. That appears to be the direction. Rebecca sat down slowly. For the first time, she looked less like a lawyer and more like a sister discovering she had been professionally useful to the man she trusted. Maya opened another file. Blackthorn, Family Governance Risk Notes. Author, J.H. Julian. There were 5 sections. 1 for each sister. Sophie Hawthorne. Avoids direct conflict. Responds to appeals for unity. Likely to delay escalation if offered private reassurance. Claire Hawthorne. High ethical self-concept. Will accept restrictive action if framed as patient protection or elder care. Rebecca Hawthorne. Process-dependent. Resistant to emotional claims. Highly likely to accept certified documentation absent technical contradiction. Olivia Hawthorne. Narrative-first decision-maker. Can be activated by reputational threat and urgency. Then Vivian. Maya opened the final note. Vivian Hawthorne. Primary vulnerability, stability framing. Will sacrifice individual interests if presented as necessary to preserve institutional continuity. Recommended approach. Described dissent as existential family risk. No one spoke. Rebecca read the line twice. Then again. Olivia had joined us by secure video. Sophie stood near the wall. Claire listened from the hospital. Vivian was not present. Not yet. Rebecca finally whispered. He studied us. Maya said nothing. Sophie looked sick. Olivia closed her eyes. Claire's voice came through the speaker. No. We all looked toward the screen. She continued. He used us. I looked at the 5 profiles. Then at my sisters. 3 in the room or on video. 1 at the hospital. 1 still absent. He did both. Rebecca looked at me. What? He studied you. I pointed toward the file. And then you made the choices he expected. Sophie's face tightened. That's cruel. No. I looked at her. It's the part none of you get to erase. Rebecca folded her arms. If he manipulated information, he did. If he forged documents, he did. If he engineered circumstances, he did. Then we were deceived. Yes. I waited. But you still signed. Rebecca's face changed. I continued. You still voted. Sophie still stayed quiet. Claire still blocked my access. Olivia still broadcast the accusation. And Vivian still threatened to throw me out. No one answered. I looked at Julian's psychological profiles. He didn't control your hands. Silence. That silence mattered more than any apology. Maya suddenly leaned toward her monitor. There's another archive attached to the Blackthorn file. What kind? Identity risk. My pulse changed. She opened it. Old DNA vendor records appeared. Laboratory contracts. An ancestry database match. A private investigator report. Date: 9 months before I first entered Hawthorne Manor. Subject: Ethan Vale. Potential biological match to Arthur Hawthorne paternal line. Sophie whispered, "No?" Rebecca stood. Olivia leaned closer to her camera. Claire said, "When was this created?" Maya repeated the date. 9 months before my return. Julian had known. Not suspected after I appeared. Known before I even understood who I was. The next file contained correspondence between Julian and his biological father, Marcus Crowe. One message. If Ethan reaches Arthur directly, the identity trust becomes unstable. Julian's reply. Then he never gets close enough to Arthur to matter. Attached, my old apartment. Vale Machine Works. My foster mother's name. Photographs of me entering the shop. 6 years ago. I thought I had arrived at Hawthorne Manor unexpectedly. I thought Julian had become threatened by my appearance. I was wrong. He had been waiting. Rebecca stared at the screen. How long did he know? I answered before Maya could. Long enough to prepare. Sophie looked at me. You knew this too. I said nothing. She stepped closer. Ethan. I looked at the old photograph. My younger self leaving the machine shop. Unaware. Watched. Already classified as a threat. I finally understood something that had bothered me since waking in the boardroom. Julian had not improvised my destruction. He had rehearsed it. And if he had started planning before I arrived, then my death on Blackstone Bridge had probably not been the end of his plan. It had been part of it from the beginning. Vivian arrived at Vale Systems at 8:07 the next morning. She did not call first. She did not bring Hawthorne Counsel. She did not bring security. For Vivian, that was practically surrender. I watched from the second-floor conference room as she crossed the lobby alone in a dark gray suit, carrying a thin leather folder under one arm. Maya glanced at me. She looks angry. She always looks angry. No. Maya watched the camera. This is different. She was right. Vivian was not angry because someone challenged her authority. She was angry because, for the first time in years, she had discovered that her authority had been useful to someone else. I let her wait 7 minutes. Not to punish her. Because I was finishing a call with First Meridian Bank. Hawthorne Medical had secured temporary replacement support for part of the rehabilitation facility loan. The project would survive. Claire had spent the last 48 hours restructuring the package instead of calling me selfish. Consequences were educational. When I entered the conference room, Vivian was standing. She did not sit. Neither did I. She placed the folder on the table. You released Blackthorn materials to Rebecca. The independent auditor released them to authorized parties. You knew she would show us. I expected her to do her job. Vivian's jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Talk to me like I'm one of your clients. You are. Her eyes hardened. I'm your sister. No. The word landed harder than I intended. Or maybe exactly as hard. Vivian went still. I continued. You're the chief executive of a company currently under forensic review. You can keep pretending blood means nothing. I spent 6 years learning that lesson from you. She looked away first. That had never happened before. I opened the Blackthorn psychological briefing on the wall display. 5 profiles. 5 weaknesses. Julian's language. Vivian stared at hers. Primary vulnerability, stability framing. Will sacrifice individual interests if presented as necessary to preserve institutional continuity. Recommended approach. Described dissent as existential family risk. She read it silently, then said, it could be fabricated. Metadata says no. Metadata can be manipulated. Then submit your copy to a second examiner. I already did. That surprised me. She continued. 2 firms. And they agree it originated from Julian's Blackthorn workspace. I said nothing. Vivian finally sat. He wrote that about me. Yes. He described Claire as ethically exploitable. Yes. Rebecca as predictable. Yes. Olivia as controllable through reputation. Yes. Sophie is weak. Yes. Her eyes lifted. And you? There wasn't a profile for me. Vivian frowned. Why? Because I wasn't part of the family governance model. The answer hurt her. I could see it. Blackthorn had treated me as an obstacle. Julian had treated my sisters as assets. That was the difference. Vivian closed the folder. I confronted him. When? Last night. What did he say? That Blackthorn asked for blunt psychological analysis. And you accepted that, at first. Of course. She had always accepted Julian's first explanation. What changed? He said it was necessary to prevent instability. I almost laughed. Vivian's mouth tightened. Yes. I noticed. She looked back at the profile. He used the exact phrase. Because he knew it worked. Her face hardened. You're enjoying this. No. You've wanted us to see him this way for years. Yes. That sounds like enjoyment. It isn't. I stepped closer to the table. You think I wanted to be right about all of this? She said nothing. I wanted one of you to be right. Her expression shifted. I wanted Julian to be exactly who you said he was. A brother. A good man. Someone worth choosing. My voice stayed calm. Because then at least what you did to me had a reason. Vivian looked down. For the first time since I returned to the Hawthorns 6 years ago. She looked older. Not physically. Tired. You never said that. I said worse. You accused us. I begged you. Silence. You heard accusation because begging was inconvenient. She closed her eyes briefly. Then opened them. What do you want from me? There it was again. Every sister eventually asked the same question. What do you want me to do? As if I had spent years collecting tasks for them. Nothing. That is not an answer. It is. You terminated Sentinel. Withdrew financial support. Released evidence. You clearly want something. I wanted control of my own property. And now, distance. Her eyes narrowed. You keep saying that word like it solves everything. No. It solves one thing. What? It stops you from deciding what happens to me. She looked toward the glass wall. Beyond it, Veil Systems employees moved between workstations. My people. My company. Nothing here required Vivian's approval. That seemed to bother her more than the argument. She picked up the leather folder. Then stopped. There's more. I waited. She opened it again. Inside were printed messages. Julian and Vivian. Months of conversation. Mostly ordinary. Board schedules. Trust questions. Hospital financing. Media responses. But the pattern was obvious. Julian repeatedly used the same phrases. We can't risk division. Grandfather is vulnerable. Ethan is emotional. The family needs one position. If we show uncertainty, he'll exploit it. Vivian had responded almost every time with approval. Proceed. Agreed. Handle it. Keep this contained. Julian did not command Vivian. He framed. She commanded herself. That was more effective. Vivian touched one message. He told me your request for independent DNA testing was a hostile legal strategy. I asked for witness samples. He said you planned to challenge every trust asset if the result didn't satisfy you. I wanted a test no one could switch. He told me grandfather's affection was affecting his judgment. Grandfather wanted verification. Vivian's voice dropped. He always gave me something true. Yes. Then changed what it meant. Yes. She looked at me. That's how he did it. No. She frowned. That's how he lied. I pointed at her messages. This is how you did the rest. Her eyes hardened. You think we have no right to say we were manipulated? You were manipulated. Then why do you keep? Because being manipulated doesn't erase choice. The room went silent. You signed orders. You froze my access. You told security not to admit me. You threatened to remove me from the estate if I didn't cooperate. You did those things. Julian made them easier. He didn't move your hand. Vivian stood abruptly. You have no idea what it meant to hold this family together. I stared at her. I know exactly what it cost. Her mouth opened. I continued. It cost me. That stopped her. You kept calling every sacrifice necessary because you were never the sacrifice. Vivian's face went white. Maya entered quietly. Sorry. She wasn't sorry. Independent auditor has a live identity update. Vivian turned. What? Maya connected the wall screen. The old ancestry match from 9 months before my return appeared. Then laboratory records. Then a payment chain. Marcus Crow. Julian's biological father. Private genetic contractor. Payment issued. Results suppressed. Vivian stared. Marcus found Ethan before us. Maya nodded. Before grandfather's investigator did. How? An ancestry database match. I knew the answer now. My foster mother had been sick. I had submitted DNA while looking for family medical history. At the time, I thought nothing came of it. Someone had been watching. Maya opened an archive correspondence. Marcus Crowe. He matches Arthur's paternal line. Probability is high. Julian. Does he know? Marcus. No. Julian. Keep it that way. Vivian sat again. She looked physically ill. Another message. Marcus. If Arthur finds him first, we lose control of the trust. Julian. Then make sure Arthur doesn't find him. Sophie entered behind Maya. She had apparently been watching from the adjoining room. Claire appeared by secure video from the hospital. Rebecca joined remotely. Olivia was already connected. For the first time, all 5 sisters were seeing the same evidence at the same time. No private version. No Julian interpretation. No one could tell Sophie one thing and Vivian another. Maya opened a final folder. Photographs. Me leaving Vale Machine Works. Me buying groceries. Me carrying tools into my old apartment. Me visiting my foster mother during her last hospital stay. 6 months before I knew Hawthorne existed. Sophie whispered, "He had someone following you." I stared at the images. My younger self looked tired, ordinary, unaware. The final photograph showed me sitting on the curb outside the machine shop after my foster mother died. Head down, hands clasped, alone. Julian had known who I was then. He had known I was grieving. Known I had no idea a wealthy family existed less than an hour away. And instead of telling anyone, he watched. Claire covered her mouth. Olivia turned away from her camera. Rebecca said, "This predates Ethan's first DNA request." "Yes," Maya said. Vivian's voice was barely audible. "He knew before Ethan came home." Home. The word irritated me. I didn't come home. Everyone looked at me. I arrived at a house. Sophie's face tightened. "Ethan, no." I looked at the 5 screens and faces. That distinction matters. No one answered. Rebecca recovered first. If Julian and Marcus suppressed the ancestry result, then the first Hawthorne test may have been compromised before collection. Maya nodded. "We're already pulling vendor records." Claire said, "The hospital that processed the second test used an outside genetic contractor." "Which one?" Vivian asked. Maya opened another document. Crow Diagnostic Services. No one spoke. Julian's father had access to both testing pipelines. Rebecca stood. "I'm filing for preservation of every original sample record." Olivia said, "I'll freeze external communications until the audit verifies this." Claire, "I want grandfather's old sample history independently reviewed." Sophie, "I'll give them my comparative DNA." They all started moving. Efficient, professional, useful. Exactly the women I had always known they could be. 6 years late, I watched them organize the truth with the same intensity they once used to organize my removal. Vivian turned toward me. "We're going to fix this." "No." She stopped. "We're going to expose it." "Yes." "That fixes part of it." "Yes." "And after?" There it was again. "After." I looked at her. "After. You live with what happened before." Her face tightened. At 6:40 that evening, Vivian called a private Hawthorne meeting. I did not attend. At 7:15, Sophie sent me one message. "He's denying everything." At 7:31, he says Blackthorn fabricated the profiles. At 7:44, he says Marcus handled DNA without telling him. At 8:03, Vivian asked him for his devices. I stared at that message. Then another came. He refused. At 8:11, he left. I forwarded everything to Daniel, then returned to work. At 10:26, Maya called me back into the forensic room. "Found something." "What?" "A dormant Crownbridge folder referenced in Blackthorn due diligence." She opened it. The title made my hands go cold. Vehicle Contingency, EV. I stopped breathing for half a second. Maya noticed. "You okay?" "Yes." It was a lie. She opened the folder. A service invoice. A contractor. A vehicle identification number. Mine. Not my current car. My old one. The car I had driven in my first life. The date was months in the future. But the contingency plan already existed. Scheduled inspection window. Steering control access. Blackstone corridor. Emergency tow coverage. My fingers went numb. The river returned. Cold water. Cracked glass. 5 unanswered calls. Maya looked at me. "You recognize this?" I stared at the line. Preferred incident profile. Mechanical failure during solo travel. I swallowed. "Yes." "How?" I could not answer. "Not yet." Daniel entered. "Read the file." His expression changed. "This isn't financial fraud." "No." I heard my own voice as if from far away. It never was. The $18 million. The fake account. The media campaign. The trust amendment. The DNA manipulation. Those were not separate crimes. They were steps. Remove my credibility. Remove my rights. Remove my company. Remove my access to grandfather. And if I still survived all of that, remove me. I looked at the scheduled route. Blackstone Bridge. Same road. Same place. My death had not been an accident. And Julian had already begun planning it before I came back to life. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights reflected on wet pavement, the steering wheel refusing to move, the barrier coming toward me, the black water. For months after I woke in the past, I had treated the crash as the final move Julian made after everything else. Now I understood. It had been prepared much earlier. Maya built the evidence timeline across 3 monitors. The vehicle contingency file was not a complete murder plan. That would have been too easy. It was worse. Fragments, invoices, contractor access, route analysis, service windows, false mechanical report templates. Enough pieces that no single document said, "Kill Ethan Vale." But together they said something close enough. Daniel arrived before sunrise. He read the contractor invoices twice. "We need external investigators." "Yes." "Now." "Yes." He looked at me. "You're not reacting normally." I almost laughed. "What's normal? You look like you've seen this before." I stared at him. He had said something similar after the first board meeting. I looked away. "I know this route. That's not what I meant. It's what you're getting." He studied me, then stopped pushing. At 8:30, an independent investigative team entered Vale Systems. By noon, they confirmed the automotive contractor had received Crownbridge funds. By 2, they recovered an archived service request referencing my vehicle identification number. By 4, a subcontractor admitted someone from Marcus Crow's office had requested remote access to the steering control diagnostics. The request had been described as security evaluation. No work had been completed yet in this timeline. Because the service window was still months away, I was alive because I had returned early enough to interrupt the plan. That realization made me colder than anger. At 5:10, investigators asked the Hawthorne family to attend a formal evidence conference. Julian came with Marcus. Marcus Crow was nothing like his son. Julian performed warmth. Marcus performed boredom. He was in his late 60s, thin, silver-haired, and looked at every person in the room as if they were an administrative problem. My 5 sisters sat opposite them. I sat at a separate table with Daniel. That distance mattered. The sisters had asked me to sit with them. I refused. The conference began with the $18 million, then Crownbridge, then token duplication, then medical credentials, then the forged trust amendment, then suppressed DNA records. Julian denied each point separately. The money was routed through legitimate entities. Sophie's token could have been cloned by Vale Systems. Claire's credentials were compromised through hospital infrastructure. Rebecca's signature certificate was accessible to legal staff. The DNA contractor made errors. Blackthorn notes were strategy documents, not personal manipulation. One explanation after another, always plausible enough when isolated. Then the investigator opened the vehicle file. Julian stopped moving. Marcus did not. That told me everything. The lead investigator placed a contractor invoice on the screen. Crownbridge paid Wexler Automotive Systems for a future diagnostic session involving Ethan Vale's vehicle. Marcus spoke first. Corporate security testing. Why was Blackstone Bridge included in the route analysis? No answer. Julian leaned back. Ethan drives that route. No. I said. Everyone looked at me. Not anymore. Julian's eyes narrowed. The investigator continued. The file also includes an emergency towing arrangement and a mechanical failure narrative. Marcus folded his hands. Risk contingency planning. Daniel laughed quietly. Risk to whom? Marcus looked at him. You're assigning sinister meaning to normal executive protection work. Executive protection normally prevents failures. Daniel said. This file models one. Julian finally looked at me. For the first time since I woke, I saw fear. Not fear of prison. Fear of me. You knew. He said. No one understood. I did. I said nothing. Julian leaned forward. You knew about this. Vivian turned toward him. What are you talking about? He ignored her. How? I held his gaze. The Blackstone Bridge. The river. His message. Meet me alone. He knew the exact shape of my death. And now he knew I recognized it before it happened. I know what you do when evidence gets too close. His face changed. Marcus looked at him sharply. Stop talking. Julian ignored him. You think this makes you clever? No. You think because you preserved some logs. You won, no? Then what do you want? There it was. Even him. Always the same question. What do you want? I answered, what belongs to me? Julian laughed. My life. No. Your family, no? That confused him. I continued. My company. My name. My property. My future. And the right to never need permission from any of you again. Julian looked toward my sisters. You hear that? He smiled without humor. He doesn't want you. Sophie's face tightened. Claire looked down. Rebecca remained rigid. Olivia said nothing. Vivian stared at him. Julian saw the silence and mistook it for opportunity. He never did. That's why he came back with lawyers and DNA tests. He wanted the trust, the company, the inheritance. I almost admired it. Even now he needed the old story. Because if I had wanted their love, then he had something to compete for. If I didn't, his entire identity became pointless. You were never supposed to come back, he said. The room went still. Marcus closed his eyes. Julian. Too late. Vivian leaned forward. What did you say? Julian realized he had crossed something. Then he did what he always did when control slipped. He accelerated. My father found him first. No one moved. Sophie whispered. When? Julian looked at her. Months before grandfather's investigator. Rebecca said, you knew he was biological. I knew he matched Arthur's line. That means yes. It means there was a possibility. You suppressed it. We protected the family. Claire's face changed. From him, from chaos. Vivian's voice was dangerously quiet. You changed the tests. Marcus spoke. That has not been established. Julian turned on him. You arranged the contractor. Marcus's face froze. The investigator said nothing. No one needed him to. Rebecca stared. You switched samples. Julian's jaw tightened. I made sure an unverified stranger didn't take over our family. Stranger? Sophie whispered. He was our brother. He was a database match. Olivia's voice sharpened. You knew before he ever arrived. Julian looked at her. You all knew me. That's not what she asked. Rebecca said. Julian stood. You want honesty? Marcus said again. Sit down. Julian laughed. No. Let's be honest. He pointed toward Sophie. You wanted everyone happy. So I told you Ethan would tear the family apart if you took sides. You believed it because conflict terrified you. Sophie went pale. He turned to Claire. You needed to believe every cruel decision was ethical. So I told you restricting Ethan protected grandfather. You signed everything. Claire's face lost color. Rebecca next. You trusted documents more than people. All I had to do was put a certificate on a lie. Rebecca stood. You forged my signature. I used the system you built. Then, Olivia. You needed to control the story. I gave you one. And you broadcast it before checking because being first mattered more than being right. Olivia looked as if she had been struck. Finally, Vivian. Julian smiled. And you. Vivian did not move. You were easiest. Sophie whispered, stop. He ignored her. All I ever had to say was stability. His smile widened. Family stability. Company stability. Grandfather's stability. Every time I said those words, you sacrificed whoever I pointed at. Vivian's face became completely blank. That was worse than anger. Julian continued. You all want to blame me now because it's easier than admitting he was never important enough for you to check. Silence. He looked at me. And there it was. The last weapon. You think I stole your sisters? I said nothing. They chose me. I know. His smile disappeared. I continued. They loved you more. Everyone stared at me. Julian had expected denial. Pain. Anger. Competition. Instead, I gave him the truth. You had 14 years with them. They had memories with you. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. Inside jokes. You were their brother. I paused. And I was the man asking for a DNA test. Julian's face tightened. You admit it. Yes. You lost. No. He frowned. That's what you still don't understand. I leaned back. I stopped competing. Silence. I don't want your room. I don't want your place at their table. I don't want Vivian to choose me over you. I don't want Sophie crying in my office. I don't want Claire calling me family because your lies finally reached her hospital. I don't want Rebecca believing me because you forged her name. I don't want Olivia defending me because you embarrassed her on television. All 5 sisters went still. Julian stared. I continued. I wanted those things once. You killed that version of me. His eyes flickered. The words were closer to literal truth than anyone knew. Then Claire spoke. You altered grandfather's care. Julian turned. I prevented him from making a catastrophic decision. You used my credentials. He was medicated. You increased his isolation. He needed controlled access. You tried to transfer him. He needed protection. To a Crownbridge facility? Julian said nothing. Claire's voice broke. You could have killed him. He was monitored. The admission landed. Claire stepped back. Vivian whispered, "You used us." Julian looked at her. "I protected what we had." "No," Sophie said. Everyone turned. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "You protected your place." Julian laughed. "And what do you think Ethan is doing?" Sophie looked at me, then back at him. "He's leaving." That silenced the room. Julian frowned. Sophie continued. "He keeps leaving. He left the boardroom. He left the estate. He won't answer us. He won't come back even when we ask." Tears filled her eyes. "He's not trying to take your place." Julian stared at her. For the first time, he had no response. The lead investigator stood. "We're taking custody of the preserved vehicle records and DNA contractor files." Marcus rose immediately. "My counsel will challenge that." Daniel said, "You can." Two investigators approached. Julian looked around the room. At Vivian. Then Claire. Rebecca. Olivia. Sophie. No one moved toward him. His voice changed. "You're really choosing him?" Vivian looked at me. Then Julian. Her answer was quiet. "No." Julian almost smiled. Then she finished. "We're choosing the evidence you spent years teaching us to ignore." His face emptied. Rebecca closed her laptop. Claire turned away. Olivia removed the Hawthorne family communication badge from her jacket. Sophie sat down. No one stood behind Julian. The image hit me harder than I expected. The boardroom. 5 sisters behind him. Me alone. Now Julian stood in the center of the room with Marcus. And my sisters were no longer protecting him. Old Ethan would have crossed the room. He would have thought, finally they chose me. I didn't move. Because Vivian had been right in one narrow sense. They were not choosing me. They were choosing evidence. That was necessary. It was not love. It was not loyalty. And it was not enough to rewrite 6 years. As investigators escorted Julian and Marcus toward the doors, Julian twisted back. His eyes found mine. "You think they'll love you now?" I looked at him. "I don't care." That hurt him more than hatred. The doors closed. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Sophie stood. "Ethan." I picked up my file. "No." She stopped. Vivian said, "We need to discuss what happens next." "You do. You're part of this." "No." "The identity trust can go through Daniel." Rebecca frowned. "The new DNA verification will determine your legal position." "Good." Claire said, "Grandfather wants you there. I'll speak to him privately." Olivia looked at me. "And the family?" I turned toward the door. "You're still confusing truth with reconciliation." Vivian followed me into the hall. "The Foundation Summit is in 4 days." "I know. The independent DNA result will be presented." "Fine. Grandfather wants your status formally restored." I stopped. There it was. Restored. As if I were a painting removed from a wall. As if they could put me back where I belonged and call the damage repaired. Vivian continued. "We can correct everything." "No." Her expression hardened. "We can correct the legal record." "Yes." "We can restore your trust rights." "Yes." "Your place in the family." "No." She stared. "You haven't even heard what we're proposing." "I don't need to." "Ethan." I looked at her. "You're preparing the wrong thing." "What does that mean?" "You think proving I'm your brother means I become one again." Her face changed. I walked away. Behind me, none of my sisters followed. For once, they understood that chasing me was not the same as earning the right to stand beside me. The Hawthorne Foundation Summit had been scheduled 6 months earlier. In my first life, it became Julian's coronation. I remembered watching the live stream alone from a rented apartment while Olivia introduced him as the brother who had protected the family through its darkest crisis. 3 days later, I lost access to Hawthorne Manor. A month after that, Rebecca's trust filing stripped away what remained of my inheritance. This time, the same ballroom was full. More than 400 people. Trustees, hospital partners, investors, reporters, foundation donors, senior Hawthorne executives. But Julian's chair was empty. There were 6 seats on the stage. 5 for my sisters. 1 with Julian Hawthorne printed on a white card. No one had removed it. I preferred that. An empty chair told the story better than any speech. I did not sit with my sisters. I had a separate witness table beside Daniel and Maya. Vivian noticed the arrangement. She looked at the empty seat beside Sophie. Then at me. I stayed where I was. The independent trustee opened the proceeding at 9:03. This summit will address the disputed Hawthorne Identity Trust, unauthorized foundation transfers, compromised medical and legal credentials, Blackthorn acquisition activity, and the independent biological review. No one moved. The first evidence concerned the $18 million. Maya explained the Crownbridge structure, the original transfer records, the cropped routing number, the shell entities, the false Ethan Vale reconciliation account. The room listened in complete silence. Then Sophie testified. She walked to the witness chair holding nothing. No prepared apology. No dramatic speech. The trustee asked, "Did Ethan Vale ever possess your hardware authorization token?" "No." "Did he ask you to approve any of the foundation transfers?" "No." "Who did possess the token?" Sophie looked toward the empty Julian chair. "Julian." "For how long?" "Approximately 11 minutes." "Why did you initially support the accusation against Ethan?" Her throat moved. For 1 second I thought she would soften the answer. She didn't. "Because Julian told me Ethan cloned the device. And I believed him before checking." The trustee asked, "Why?" Sophie looked at me. "I did not help her. Because I trusted Julian more." No excuse. No claim that she had no choice. Just the truth. That mattered. Claire testified next. She described the unauthorized transfer request involving grandfather, the use of her medical credentials, the Crownbridge facility, the remote access from Julian's executive floor. Then the trustee asked, "Did you restrict Ethan Vale's medical access before independently verifying his identity dispute?" Claire went still. "Yes." "Why?" "I believed allowing him greater access might create conflict around grandfather." "Based on whose recommendation?" "Julian's." "Did you independently verify the claimed risk?" "No." Her eyes dropped. "I should have." Rebecca followed. Her testimony was the most precise. She admitted that she filed legal actions based on a trust amendment bearing her electronic signature. She admitted the signature was issued while she was physically aboard a transatlantic flight. She explained the certificate compromise. Then the trustee asked, "Why did you not verify your own execution history before filing?" Rebecca paused. "Because the document was already inside the trust archive, and I assumed the archive reflected a legitimate process." "Was that assumption justified?" "No." "Did Ethan previously request independent forensic review?" "Yes." "And did you support that request?" "No." Rebecca's expression tightened. "I believed he was using delay to obstruct the investigation." The trustee asked, "Do you believe that now?" "No." Olivia came next. The room became more tense. Everyone remembered the press conference. She described Meridian Reputation Group, the pre-written talking points, the edited audio, the fact that Hawthorne Media had distributed a narrative before the alleged fraud had been independently verified. "Why?" the trustee asked. Olivia stared at the microphone. "Because I believe controlling the first version of the story would protect the family." "Did it?" "No." "What did it do?" She looked at me. "It harmed someone before we knew whether the accusation was true." The trustee said nothing. He didn't need to. Then Vivian took the chair. My eldest sister sat straighter than the others. Not defensive, not proud, just rigid. The trustee displayed Julian's Blackthorn profile of her. Primary vulnerability, stability framing. Will sacrifice individual interests if presented as necessary to preserve institutional continuity. Vivian read it again, even though she had seen it dozens of times. "Do you believe this assessment was accurate?" the trustee asked. She took a long breath. "Yes." The room shifted. Vivian continued before he could ask another question. "I repeatedly accepted restrictions on Ethan because Julian framed them as necessary for stability." She looked toward me. "I told myself temporary harm to one person was justified if it protected thousands of employees. Our grandfather, the trust, or the company." Her voice remained controlled. "But Ethan was always the person being asked to absorb that harm." No one moved. "I called it stability because that made the decision easier to live with." The trustee asked, "Do you believe Julian controlled your decisions?" Vivian looked at the empty chair. "No." Then at me. "He influenced them." A pause. "But I made them." That was the answer I wanted. Not because it repaired anything. Because finally someone understood the difference. The trustee closed the testimony file. Then the DNA evidence began. 3 independent laboratories. Witness collection. Separate chain of custody. No Hawthorne employees involved. No Crow contractors. No family-controlled facility. The result appeared on the main screen. Paternity line consistency, confirmed. Maternal line consistency, confirmed. Biological relationship to Arthur Hawthorne, confirmed. My legal birth identity, Ethan Hawthorne. The room erupted. Cameras turned toward me. Reporters began speaking over one another. Sophie closed her eyes. Claire covered her mouth. Rebecca stared at the result. Olivia lowered her head. Vivian did not move. I felt almost nothing. That surprised me. In my first life, I dreamed about this moment. I imagined my sisters running toward me, grandfather embracing me, the world finally admitting I had not invented my place. Now the result was simply evidence. Necessary, important, but not salvation. The independent trustee continued. The Hawthorne Identity Trust therefore recognizes Ethan Vale, born Ethan Hawthorne, as the protected biological beneficiary. He outlined my restored trust rights, equity, asset interests, voting protections, compensation claims. Then grandfather appeared by secure video from his private residence. He looked stronger, older, tired, but alive. Ethan. The entire room became quiet. I stood. Grandfather said, "I failed you." I shook my head. "You were the only one who kept asking for another test. I should have insisted sooner. You were isolated. I still failed." I didn't argue. Grandfather looked at the trustee. "Restore everything that belongs to him." Then at me. "And come home." There it was. The sentence I once would have sold anything to hear. Come home. Vivian stood. We prepared the original air suite. Sophie looked at me. "Mom's things are there." Claire added, "Your childhood records." Rebecca, "The trust documents are corrected." Olivia, "We can issue a public family statement today." The whole room waited. I walked to the microphone. Cameras followed. "My name is Ethan Vale." Vivian flinched slightly. I continued. "The evidence confirms that I was born Ethan Hawthorne." A pause. "That truth matters." I displayed the trust documents. "I will accept the assets legally assigned to me." Then the Vale Systems Agreement. Hawthorne Global may continue licensing Sentinel under an independent commercial contract. Vivian looked at me. I continued. "No family discount." A few people in the room shifted. "No privileged access. No private administrator exemptions. No family-controlled evidence custody." Then I displayed copies of Olivia's original statement and the other public accusations. Every false allegation will be corrected through the same channels used to publish it. Olivia nodded once. I placed the final settlement document on the table. "I will not accept an executive role at Hawthorne Global." Vivian's face changed. "I will not move into Hawthorne Manor." Sophie looked down. "I will not participate in a public announcement describing this as a family reunion." Claire whispered, "Ethan." I kept going. "I am not asking for a seat at the family table." Vivian stepped closer. "Then what are you asking for?" I looked at her. "Distance." The microphone carried the word through the entire ballroom. Sophie closed her eyes. Grandfather looked down on the video screen. No one spoke. I continued. "Julian manipulated all 5 of you." "That is true." "He also forged evidence, stole money, compromised credentials, interfered with grandfather's care, and prepared a plan involving my vehicle. But he did not force your signatures. He did not force your votes. He did not force Olivia to broadcast the accusation. He did not force Claire to block my access. He did not force Vivian to threaten me with exile." No one interrupted. "You told the truth today. That matters. It is necessary." Then I looked at all 5 of them. "It is not reconciliation." Vivian's eyes filled. She looked angry about it. Or ashamed. Maybe both. After the summit ended, the sisters asked me to go upstairs. I almost refused. Then Sophie said, "There's something of Mom's you should see." So I followed. The old Hawthorne Air Suite occupied the West Wing. Julian had lived there for 14 years. Now it had been emptied. No photographs of him. No clothes. No trophies. The room had been rebuilt around objects recovered after my childhood disappearance. A small wooden airplane. A blue blanket. Photographs. A cabinet containing my mother's recordings. On the dresser sat the Hawthorne signet ring I left in the boardroom. Sophie picked it up. We kept it. I didn't take it. Vivian opened the inner bedroom door. We restored the room to the original plans. I looked inside. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. The bed. The family crest. My mother's photograph. A desk facing the river. The room I had imagined for 6 years. The room I once thought would prove I belonged. Sophie whispered, "It's yours." I stood in the doorway. Didn't enter. "It was mine when none of you wanted me in it." Her eyes filled. I looked around once more. Now it's just a room. Vivian's voice broke slightly. Where will you go? Home. Claire stared. You still won't call this home? No. I turned away. At the end of the hall, Sophie said, Ethan. I stopped. She did not ask me to stay. That was progress. Instead, she said, I'm sorry we opened the door after you stopped wanting to come through it. I looked back. Me too. Then I left. This time no one tried to stop me. The Hawthorne scandal lasted 11 months. The headlines changed almost every week. First the $18 million, then Crownbridge, then Blackthorn, then the DNA fraud, then the vehicle contingency. Eventually the story became too large for one headline. Julian pleaded guilty to multiple counts involving financial fraud, forged identity records, unauthorized system access, conspiracy involving the trust, and the planned interference with my vehicle. Marcus Crowe entered a separate agreement. He provided the complete history, the ancestry match, the altered tests, the contractors, the hidden payments, the effort to preserve Julian's position after they discovered I was alive. I did not attend the final sentencing hearing. Daniel did. He called afterward. Julian asked if you submitted a victim statement. I didn't. He expected one. Of course. Want to know what he said? No. Daniel laughed softly. You really don't, no? There was a pause. You're allowed to be angry. I am. You don't sound angry. Anger doesn't require an audience. I ended the call and returned to work. Veil Systems had grown faster than anyone expected. Once the Hawthorne scandal exposed how much Sentinel had been doing behind the scenes, companies began calling. Hospitals, universities, foundations, financial firms, family offices, organizations terrified of exactly what had happened inside Hawthorne. Within a year, Veil Systems employed 214 people. Hawthorne Global became one client among dozens. They paid the full rate. Vivian negotiated the new contract personally. No discount, no exceptions, no family clause. She signed without argument. That was probably the closest thing to respect she knew how to give. Hawthorne itself survived. I wanted that. Thousands of employees had never accused me. Nurses at Claire's hospitals had nothing to do with Julian. Junior analysts at Hawthorne Ventures had not frozen my trust. Factory workers had not thrown me out of an estate. Destroying the entire empire would have been easy to imagine. It would also have been childish. So Hawthorne restructured. Vivian stepped down as chief executive for 8 months, while an outside leadership team stabilized the company. Claire rebuilt credential controls across the hospital network. No physician administrator could approve sensitive transfer changes alone anymore. Rebecca created mandatory external verification for trust documents and high-risk legal certificates. Olivia separated Hawthorne Media's news operation from family communications. Sophie left several family investment committees entirely. The sisters changed. I knew that. I also knew change did not create a debt I had to repay with closeness. My own life moved somewhere else. I bought Veil Machine Works back. The building had been closed since my foster mother died. The first time I returned, dust covered the old drill press. Her handwritten safety rules were still taped beside the electrical panel. My foster father's radio sat on a shelf. The place smelled like oil, old wood, and rust. Nothing about it looked impressive. I stood there for nearly an hour, then called Maya. I found the new headquarters. She arrived 20 minutes later, stared at the broken windows, the leaking roof, the ancient wiring, then looked at me. You're serious? Yes. This place is terrible. It's perfect. Renovation took 9 months. We preserved the brick, the steel beams, the original workshop floor. The first Sentinel workstation became part of the entrance exhibit. Above it we mounted a photograph of my foster parents. No Hawthorne name, no crest, no marble. The upper floors became engineering offices. The original machine shop became a forensic training lab. And beside the main building we constructed a smaller center. The Veil Identity Initiative. It helped organizations investigate adoption fraud, falsified family records, identity theft, disputed inheritance documents, and missing person cases. I funded it using part of my Hawthorne Trust distribution. That irony did not bother me. The money legally belonged to me. What I did with it finally belonged to me too. I did not build the center because I believed biological families had to reunite. My own life had cured me of that fantasy. I built it because no person should depend on a wealthy family's willingness to examine evidence. Grandfather moved out of Hawthorne Manor that winter. He bought a smaller residence overlooking the Hudson. I visited once a month. Not every week. Not every day. He never pushed. That helped. Sometimes we talked about my mother. Sometimes veil systems. Sometimes nothing important. The relationship became real because neither of us tried to force it into something bigger than it was. My sisters handled distance differently. Claire sent medical updates about grandfather only when necessary. Rebecca communicated through Daniel regarding trust matters. Olivia sent copies of public corrections without commentary. Vivian never called without a business reason. Sophie struggled the most. For 3 months, she sent messages every week. Nothing dramatic. I saw this today and thought of you. Grandfather asked about you. I'm sorry. Eventually they stopped. Then one afternoon, almost a year after the summit, reception called. Sophie Hawthorne is here. I looked up from a licensing review. Did she make an appointment? No. I considered sending her away. Then said, give her 10 minutes. She entered my office carrying a cardboard box. No designer bag. No assistant. She placed the box on my desk. What is it? Something from the manor. I opened it. The old wooden airplane from the restored air room. One wing was broken. I remembered it. Grandfather said it had been mine as a child. Sophie sat. The estate is being sold. I heard. Vivian thought you might want this. Why didn't she send it? Sophie smiled sadly. She knew you'd return it if it came from her. She's learning. We all are. I examined the broken wing. Sophie watched. I finally understand something. What? You weren't waiting for us to realize Julian was bad. I looked at her. You were waiting for us to choose you without needing him to be bad first. That was closer than anything she had said before. Yes. Her eyes filled. And we didn't. No. She nodded. No defense. No tears designed to move me. Just acceptance. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good. She almost smiled. I'm not asking you to come back. Better. I just wanted to return that. She stood. At the door. She paused. If you ever want to call me, I'll answer. I said nothing for a moment. Then I know. She nodded. That's enough. She left. I did not call after her, but I repaired the airplane. That evening I took it downstairs to the original machine shop. I placed it beside the first Sentinel workstation. Not because Hawthorne Manor had given it to me, because it belonged to a childhood that existed before any of them chose what I was worth. 3 weeks later, Hawthorne Global's annual Sentinel renewal entered our contract system. Maya came into my office holding her tablet. Hawthorne renewal. Okay. She wants to know whether you're approving special terms. Who, Vivian? I looked at the screen. Hawthorne Global. Once. That name controlled my heartbeat. It meant the dinner table where Julian sat beside my sisters. The guest wing. The locked family suite. The signet ring. The word brother withheld like a reward. Now it was simply an account. What are the standard terms? I asked. 3-year enterprise license. Independent evidence custodian. Dual approval for executive overrides. No family-controlled audit exceptions. I nodded. Use those. Maya waited. That's it. Yes. No discount. No. No punishment surcharge either. I looked at her. She smiled. Worth asking. Standard terms. She sent the contract. At sunset, I walked through the headquarters. Engineers were still working upstairs. In the training lab, junior analysts were reviewing a simulated foundation fraud case. At the community center, 2 families were meeting with identity specialists. Near the entrance hung my foster mother's old handwritten rule. Check twice before you cut once. I laughed when I saw it. She had written it for sheet metal. It had taken me 2 lives to understand it applied to people too. I had spent 6 years accepting what my sisters told me because I wanted the answer to be family. Then I spent another life checking. The truth turned out to be simpler. Blood could prove where I came from. It could not decide where I belonged. My phone vibrated. A Sentinel notification. Hawthorne Global. Contract renewal accepted. Commercial rate. Independent controls. No privileged access. I dismissed the notification. Outside the windows, the old machine shop glowed beneath the evening lights. This place had never had portraits of my ancestors. No inherited estate. No family crest. It had something better. People had loved me here before anyone knew I was valuable. I looked at the repaired wooden airplane, then at everything built around it. In my first life, they threw me out, and I died trying to earn my way back inside. In this life, I walked out before they could push me. By the time my 5 sisters finally opened the door, I had already built a home where I never needed their permission to enter.